Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundation of Deception. Clayton Cassidy had built his life on three pillars: precision, loyalty, and control. At 32, he owned the most successful security consulting firm in Denver, specializing in corporate protection and private investigations. His clients included politicians, celebrities, and Fortune 500 executives who trusted him with their darkest secrets. Clayton's reputation was built on one simple principle. He never forgot a betrayal, and he always collected what was owed. Standing 6'3" with steel-gray eyes and calloused hands from years of military training, Clayton commanded respect wherever he walked. Former Special Forces, he'd served 3 tours before transitioning to private security. His methodical nature and ability to read people had made him wealthy, but had also made him solitary. Until he met Stephanie Holloway. Stephanie was everything Clayton thought he needed. At 28, she was a real estate agent with flowing auburn hair and a smile that could disarm even Clayton's suspicious nature. They'd met at a charity gala 2 years ago, where she'd approached him with confidence that impressed him. She seemed genuine, sweet, and refreshingly uncomplicated after years of dealing with liars and manipulators. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she'd said that first night, gesturing to the crowded ballroom. "You're not wrong," Clayton had replied, immediately drawn to her directness. What he didn't know was that Stephanie had researched him extensively before approaching. She'd learned about his wealth, his trust issues, and most importantly, his fierce loyalty to those he cared about. She'd crafted her entire personality around what she thought he wanted, a woman who valued family, honesty, and traditional values. Aaron Gillespie had been Clayton's closest friend since their military days. They'd served together, bled together, and when they returned home, they'd remained brothers in everything but blood. Aaron was Clayton's opposite in many ways. Charming where Clayton was serious, impulsive where Clayton was calculated. He worked as a fitness trainer and part-time bartender, content with a simpler life that Clayton sometimes envied. The three of them had formed an unlikely triangle. Clayton trusted Aaron completely, often inviting him to join them for dinners, vacations, and family gatherings. Aaron had been the first person Clayton told when he decided to propose to Stephanie. In fact, Aaron had helped him pick out the ring. What Clayton didn't see was the way Stephanie's eyes lingered on Aaron during their group dinners. He missed the subtle touches, the private jokes, the way they seemed to communicate without words. His trust in both of them was absolute, making him blind to what was happening right under his nose. The engagement had been everything Stephanie claimed to want. Clayton proposed on Christmas Eve at her family's cabin in Aspen, with her entire family present. Harold Holloway, Stephanie's father, had pulled Clayton aside that night with tears in his eyes. "I've never seen my daughter so happy," Harold had said, gripping Clayton's shoulder. "You're exactly the kind of man I hoped she'd find." Harold was a retired school principal, a man of old-fashioned values who'd raised Stephanie as a single father after her mother died when Stephanie was 12. He saw Clayton as the son he'd never had, successful, honorable, and devoted to his daughter. The wedding planning had consumed the next 6 months, with Stephanie throwing herself into every detail with an enthusiasm that seemed genuine. But Stephanie's real enthusiasm was reserved for her secret meetings with Aaron. They'd been careful, meeting at his apartment when Clayton was traveling for work, which happened frequently. The thrill of the forbidden had intensified their attraction, and they convinced themselves they were in love. Stephanie told herself she deserved better than Clayton's controlled, measured affection. She wanted passion, spontaneity, the kind of raw emotion that Aaron provided. Aaron, for his part, had tried to resist initially, but Stephanie was persistent, and his loyalty to Clayton warred with his growing obsession with her. She played on his insecurities, suggesting that Clayton looked down on him, that he deserved someone who appreciated him for who he was rather than what he could provide. The night before the wedding, as Clayton finalized security arrangements for the ceremony, Stephanie and Aaron met at the hotel bar where most of the wedding party was staying. They'd been careful for months, but tonight felt different. Tomorrow, Stephanie would legally belong to another man, and the weight of that reality hung between them. "We could leave tonight," Aaron had whispered, his hand covering hers across the small table. "Just disappear before tomorrow." Stephanie shook her head. "My father would never forgive me. Besides, Clayton would hunt us down. You know what he's capable of." It was true. Clayton's reputation in certain circles was fearsome. He wasn't just a security consultant. He was a man who solved problems permanently. But Stephanie had a different plan, one that would let her have everything she wanted while destroying the man who thought he owned her. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, Clayton noticed subtle changes he'd dismissed before. Stephanie seemed distant during their private breakfast, her usual chatter replaced by nervous energy. When he mentioned adjusting their honeymoon plans to include a stop in Ireland, something she'd mentioned wanting to see, she barely responded. "Everything okay?" he asked, studying her face with the same intensity he used to evaluate potential threats. "Just wedding nerves," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "There's so much to coordinate." Clayton accepted the explanation because he wanted to. His world was built on reading deception, but love had made him willfully blind to the signs. He spent the day handling last-minute security arrangements, ensuring the venue was properly protected and that his team was positioned to handle the high-profile guest list. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Holloway family estate, a sprawling property that Harold had purchased during better financial times. Clayton had insisted on covering all wedding expenses, knowing Harold's retirement income was limited. He'd grown genuinely fond of the older man and wanted to give Stephanie the wedding she claimed to dream of. During the dinner, Clayton watched Aaron closely for the first time in months. Something felt off in his friend's demeanor. Too much forced laughter, avoiding eye contact, drinking more than usual. When Clayton approached him on the terrace, Aaron's nervousness was palpable. "Big day tomorrow," Clayton said, offering Aaron a scotch. "Thanks for standing with me, brother." Aaron's hand trembled slightly as he accepted the glass. "Wouldn't miss it, Clay. You know that." But Clayton did know something was wrong now. Aaron's tell had always been the same since their military days. He touched his left ear when lying. He'd just done it 3 times in 30 seconds. Clayton's mind shifted into operational mode. Years of training kicked in as he began cataloging inconsistencies. Stephanie's phone constantly buzzing with texts she wouldn't explain, Aaron's sudden interest in working late at the gym when he usually joined their evening plans, the way they both tensed when he entered a room unexpectedly. That night, Clayton lay awake beside Stephanie, watching her sleep. Her phone sat on the nightstand, and for the first time in their relationship, he considered violating her privacy. But he didn't need to. Her phone lit up with a message at 2:17 a.m. "Aaron, can't wait to hold you tomorrow night." Clayton's blood turned to ice as he read the preview text. His military training had taught him to remain calm under fire, but this betrayal cut deeper than any enemy bullet. Quietly, he took photos of the message with his own phone, then began planning. By dawn, Clayton had accessed Stephanie's phone while she showered. The message history painted a picture that made his jaw clench with rage. Months of secret meetings, declarations of love, and most damning, detailed discussions about their plan for after the wedding. "Stephanie, once we're married, I'll have access to everything. Clayton's prenup has a clause about infidelity. If he cheats, I get half of everything. But if I cheat and he divorces me, I get nothing. Aaron, so what's the plan?" "Stephanie, we make him cheat first. I know exactly how to push his buttons. There's a woman in his past, Sarah Travis, his ex-fiancé from before the military. She's divorced now, works at that gallery downtown. A few strategically placed encounters, some photos, and we'll have our evidence." "Aaron, that's cold, Steph. Even for you." "Stephanie, it's survival, baby. I deserve more than being some control freak's trophy wife. Besides, after what Clayton's done to people who crossed him, isn't it poetic justice?" Clayton's hands clenched as he read further. They'd been watching him, learning his patterns, planning to destroy him systematically. But what made his rage turn white-hot was the final exchange from the previous week. "Aaron, sometimes I feel guilty. Clay trusts me completely. Stephanie, trust is a weakness in men like him. They think their loyalty should be returned, but loyalty is earned. He's never earned mine. He just assumed it. Clayton closed the phone and stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His face was a mask of control, but his eyes burned with something cold and calculating. They wanted to play games? He'd show them what a real strategist could do. The wedding was scheduled for 4 p.m. at St. Catherine's Cathedral, with reception to follow at the Grand Hyatt. 300 guests, including several of Clayton's most influential clients and contacts. Stephanie and Aaron thought they were going to humiliate him publicly. Instead, they just provided him with the perfect stage for their own destruction. Clayton spent the morning making phone calls to certain contacts. Men who owed him favors, professionals who specialized in finding information that people preferred to keep buried. By noon, he had dossiers on both Stephanie and Aaron that would have impressed his old intelligence unit. The most interesting discovery was Aaron's gambling problem, hidden debts to some very dangerous people that Stephanie knew nothing about. And Stephanie's real estate career was built on a foundation of lies to clients and falsified documents. They both had secrets that could destroy them, and Clayton now held every card. At 3 p.m., as he adjusted his tuxedo one final time, Clayton's phone buzzed with a message from his private investigator. Package delivered to your suite. Everything you requested is included. Clayton smiled for the first time in 24 hours. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Chapter 3. The Revelation. The cathedral was magnificent, adorned with white roses and golden light filtering through stained glass windows. 300 guests filled the pews, including several city council members, federal judges, and corporate executives who respected Clayton's reputation. Harold Holloway sat in the front row, tears already forming in his eyes as he waited to walk his daughter down the aisle. Clayton stood at the altar beside Aaron, who was sweating despite the cool interior temperature. Father McKenna, who had known Clayton since his youth, smiled warmly as they waited. The organist began the processional, and the guests rose as the bridal party appeared. Stephanie looked stunning in her Vera Wang gown, a family heirloom veil flowing behind her as she walked arm in arm with her father. Her smile was radiant, the perfect picture of a blushing bride. But Clayton saw through the performance now. Every gesture was calculated, every expression designed to sell the illusion. As Harold placed Stephanie's hand in Clayton's, the older man whispered, "Take care of her, son." "I will," Clayton replied, meaning something entirely different than Harold intended. The ceremony proceeded normally through the vows. Stephanie's voice trembled with what the guests assumed was emotion, but Clayton recognized as nervous excitement. She was minutes away from what she thought would be her victory. Aaron's hands shook as he held the rings, and twice he had to wipe sweat from his forehead. Father McKenna reached the traditional question. If anyone present knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. The cathedral fell silent. Clayton felt Stephanie's hand tense in his as she waited for the moment to pass. Instead, Clayton reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small remote control. "Actually, Father," Clayton said, his voice carrying clearly through the cathedral, "I believe our guests should know exactly who they're witnessing take vows today." The massive screen behind the altar, installed for displaying scripture during services, flickered to life. Clayton had arranged for additional screens throughout the cathedral to ensure every guest had a clear view. The first image was a photograph of Stephanie and Aaron kissing in his apartment, taken 3 weeks ago. The cathedral erupted in gasps and murmurs. Stephanie's face went white, and Aaron stepped backward as if he'd been struck. "Clay, what are you?" Stephanie started, but her voice was cut off as audio began playing through the cathedral sound system. It was a recording of their conversation from 2 nights ago, crystal clear and devastating. "Once we're married, I'll have access to everything. We make him cheat first. I deserve more than being some control freak's trophy wife." Harold Holloway stood up slowly, his face a mask of horror and rage. Around the cathedral, guests were pulling out phones, some recording, others texting frantically. The city's social elite were witnessing the spectacle of a year. Clayton turned to face his bride, his voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral. Did you really think I'd gotten this far in life by being careless, Stephanie? I've toppled governments and destroyed corporations. Did you imagine that two amateur schemers could outmaneuver me? Stephanie's composure finally cracked. You bastard. You spied on me. I protected myself, Clayton corrected. Something I learned never to neglect. Aaron tried to move toward the exit, but Clayton's security team, positioned throughout the cathedral, blocked every doorway. They weren't there for the wedding's protection. They were there to ensure no one left until Clayton was finished. The screen changed to display financial records showing Aaron's gambling debts, over $200,000 owed to some very unforgiving people. Then it shifted to Stephanie's falsified real estate documents and evidence of her fraud against elderly clients. The beautiful thing about the truth, Clayton continued, is that it doesn't care about your plans. Harold Holloway walked slowly toward the altar, his face twisted with shame and fury. When he reached Stephanie, his hand moved before anyone could react. The slap echoed through the cathedral like a gunshot. How could you, he whispered, his voice breaking. How could you do this to a man who loved you? To me. Stephanie's facade finally shattered completely. Daddy, you don't understand. Understand perfectly, Harold cut her off. I raised a monster. Father McKenna, stunned by the revelation, found his voice. I think we should conclude this gathering. Not quite yet, Clayton said. He nodded to his team, and two men stepped forward with legal documents. Stephanie, Aaron, these are restraining orders. You're not to come within 500 feet of me, my property, or my business. Violation will result in immediate arrest. He turned to address the entire cathedral. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending what was supposed to be my wedding. Instead, you've witnessed something much more valuable, the truth about the people we trust. Clayton's voice hardened as he faced Stephanie and Aaron one final time. You wanted to destroy me? You've destroyed yourselves. By Monday morning, every real estate firm in the state will know about Stephanie's fraudulent practices. Aaron, your gambling creditors received an anonymous tip about your location this morning. I'd suggest you leave town quickly. The implications hit them simultaneously. Stephanie's career was over, her reputation in ruins. Aaron's life was now in danger from the people he owed money to, and their humiliation had been witnessed by the most influential people in the city. As the cathedral slowly emptied, Harold Holloway approached Clayton. His eyes were red with tears and shame. Clayton, I'm so sorry. I thought I knew my daughter. Clayton's expression softened slightly for the older man. Harold, this isn't your fault. You raised her with good values. What she chose to do with them was her decision. Is there anything I can do? Any way to make this right? Clayton considered for a moment. Actually, there is. I have a proposition for you. Chapter 4, The Aftermath. The Grand Hyatt Ballroom had been transformed for a reception that would never happen. Ice sculptures melted slowly beside untouched champagne fountains while confused catering staff waited for instructions that would never come. Clayton arrived alone at 7 p.m., still wearing his tuxedo, to address the situation personally. The hotel manager, Maria Santos, approached him cautiously. Mr. Cassidy, we're so sorry about. Well, we're not sure what exactly happened, but the wedding is canceled, Clayton said simply. I'll honor the full payment as contracted. Please distribute the food to local shelters and send the flowers to area hospitals. The staff can keep any gratuities that would have been earned tonight. Maria's relief was visible. She'd been preparing for a difficult conversation about payment and damages. That's very generous, sir. Is there anything else we can do? Actually, yes. I'd like to use the ballroom tonight for a different kind of gathering. Within 2 hours, Clayton had transformed the space into something unprecedented, a celebration of truth. He'd send invitations to every guest who'd witnessed the cathedral incident, along with several journalists and business associates. The message was simple. Join me for an evening of honesty. Open bar, full disclosure. By 9 p.m., nearly 200 people had arrived, driven by curiosity and the promise of insider information from one of the city's most connected men. Clayton stood at the center of the ballroom, commanding attention without effort. Friends, colleagues, fellow survivors of this afternoon's entertainment, he began, raising a glass of scotch. Tonight, I want to share something with you that's rarer than an honest politician. The complete truth about what you witnessed. The crowd leaned in, recognizing they were about to receive information that most people would kill for. Stephanie Holloway and Aaron Gillespie didn't just betray my trust. They attempted to manipulate the legal system, defraud me of millions of dollars, and destroy my reputation. Their plan failed not because I'm lucky, but because I never stopped doing what made me successful. I verified everything. Clayton gestured to the screens around the ballroom, which now displayed additional evidence he hadn't revealed at the cathedral. Financial records showing Stephanie's attempts to access his accounts, photographs of Aaron meeting with divorce attorneys, and recorded conversations discussing how to fabricate evidence of Clayton's infidelity. Ladies and gentlemen, let this serve as a reminder. In business, in politics, in life, trust but verify. Always. The crowd was riveted. Several city council members exchanged meaningful glances, recognizing the implicit warning. Clayton wasn't just sharing his personal story. He was demonstrating his capabilities to anyone who might consider crossing him in the future. Federal Judge Patricia Graham approached Clayton during a brief intermission. "Mr. Cassidy, I have to ask, how long have you known about their plan?" "I suspected something was wrong for weeks," Clayton replied. "But I confirmed it less than 24 hours ago. Sometimes the heart wants to ignore what the mind already knows. And you chose to expose them publicly rather than handle it privately because—" Clayton's smile was cold. "Because betrayal in private can be denied. Betrayal witnessed by 300 people becomes truth that can never be escaped." Meanwhile, across town, Stephanie sat in her apartment staring at her phone. The device had been buzzing constantly since the cathedral incident. Calls from angry clients, text messages from former friends, and emails from reporters seeking comment. Her real estate license was being reviewed by the state board, and 2 clients had already filed complaints with the Attorney General's office. Aaron was in worse shape. He'd returned to his apartment to find 3 large men waiting in the hallway, representatives of the people he owed money to. Clayton's anonymous tip had accelerated their timeline considerably. Aaron Gillespie, the largest man, had asked pleasantly. I can explain," Aaron had started. "No need. We just want to discuss your payment schedule. Our boss saw some interesting footage on social media this afternoon. Seems like you've had some recent complications in your personal life." The message was clear. His previous grace period was over. Clayton's revelation hadn't just destroyed Aaron's reputation. It had painted a target on his back. Back at the Hyatt, Clayton was fielding questions from journalists and business associates with the skill of a seasoned politician. Each answer revealed just enough information to satisfy curiosity while demonstrating his thoroughness and reach. "Mr. Cassidy," asked Tribune reporter Dave Maxwell, "do you plan to pursue legal action against Ms. Holloway and Mr. Gillespie?" "Legal action suggests I need the courts to deliver justice," Clayton replied. "Sometimes the truth is its own punishment." The implication wasn't lost on anyone present. Clayton had just demonstrated that his capabilities extended far beyond the courtroom. In the space of one afternoon, he destroyed 2 people's lives without breaking a single law. Terrence Walker, a federal prosecutor who'd used Clayton's services in the past, pulled him aside. "Clay, I have to admire the precision. But aren't you concerned about potential retaliation?" Clayton's laugh was genuinely amused. "Terry, they spent months planning to destroy me and couldn't manage it when they had complete access to my life. What exactly do you think they can do to me now?" As the evening wound down, Harold Holloway arrived at the hotel. He'd changed from his wedding attire into simple jeans and a work shirt, looking every one of his 63 years. Clayton met him at the entrance. "Harold, you didn't need to come tonight." "Yes, I did," Harold replied firmly. "You mentioned a proposition earlier. I'd like to hear it." Clayton studied the older man's face, seeing the determination beneath the exhaustion. "Walk with me." They moved to a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the dispersing crowd. "Harold, your daughter made choices that hurt both of us, but you raised her with good values, and it's not your fault she chose to abandon them. I'm offering you a chance to help me ensure that what happened today has lasting consequences." Harold frowned. I'm not sure I understand. I need someone I can trust to manage a new foundation I'm establishing. The Clayton Cassidy Foundation for Truth in Relationships. It will provide free investigative services to people who suspect they are partners of infidelity or fraud. You'd run the day-to-day operations. Harold was quiet for a long moment. You want me to help other people avoid what happened to you? And what happened to you? Clayton corrected. You trusted your daughter, loved her unconditionally, and she was prepared to let you watch her destroy a good man. That betrayal cuts both ways. Harold's jaw tightened as he considered the offer. What would this foundation actually do? We'd provide background checks, surveillance services, financial investigations, all the tools that could have prevented today's disaster. We'd work with law enforcement to identify fraud, support victims of romantic scams, and educate people about the warning signs of deception. And Stephanie would know that I'm helping you? She'd know that you chose truth over blood, Clayton confirmed. That you refused to enable her behavior just because she's your daughter. Harold extended his hand. When do I start? Chapter 5, Building the Trap. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, Clayton's life had settled into a new rhythm. The foundation paperwork was progressing smoothly, with Harold proving to be an exceptional administrator. His military precision and educational background made him perfect for organizing the complex logistics of what would become the city's most comprehensive truth-telling operation. Clayton's security business had exploded with new clients following the cathedral incident. Word had spread through Denver's elite circles that he'd outmaneuvered 2 people with complete access to his life, demonstrating a level of operational security that impressed even the most paranoid executives. But Clayton wasn't content with defensive victories. Stephanie and Aaron had declared war on him, and wars required total victory, not just successful defense. He'd spent the past 2 weeks gathering intelligence and preparing for the next phase of his campaign. The surveillance reports made for interesting reading. Stephanie had been forced to move back in with her father after her apartment lease was terminated due to reputation concerns from a landlord. Aaron had disappeared entirely, reportedly fleeing to avoid his creditors. But Clayton knew they wouldn't simply accept defeat. People like them never did. His instincts proved correct when Harold brought disturbing news to their Thursday morning meeting. She's been asking questions, Harold said, his weathered face grim. About your business, your clients, your financial setup. She thinks she can find something to use against you. Clayton wasn't surprised. What kind of questions? Whether you've ever bent any laws for clients. Whether you have enemies who might want to hurt you. She's fishing for ammunition, trying to find someone who might help her strike back. And you told her? Harold's expression hardened. I told her that if she came near you or this foundation, I'd turn over every document and recording from her childhood to Adult Protective Services. She has a pattern of manipulation that goes back years. Teachers she lied about, friends she betrayed, boys she hurt. I kept records of everything, hoping she'd outgrow it. Clayton studied the older man with new respect. You've been documenting her behavior for years. A parent notices things, Harold said quietly. I kept hoping she'd change, that she'd find her conscience. I enabled her by cleaning up her messes, making excuses for her behavior. That ends now. Clayton opened his laptop and pulled up surveillance footage from the previous evening. Then you should know that she met with Russell Becker last night at Morrison's bar. Harold's face went white. Russell Becker was a disgraced former police detective who'd been fired for corruption and now worked as a private investigator for anyone willing to pay his fees. He specialized in digging up dirt on people who'd crossed as clients, using methods that often skirted the edge of legality. What does she think Russell can find on you? Harold asked. Nothing, Clayton replied confidently, because I've been preparing for this possibility since I was 18 years old. Every business transaction, every client relationship, every potential legal exposure has been carefully managed and documented. But Russell doesn't know that yet. Clayton pulled up another file, Russell's complete dossier, including his financial records, criminal contacts, and personal vulnerabilities. Mr. Becker has a drinking problem, a gambling addiction, and a desperate need for money to pay his ex-wife's medical bills. He's exactly the kind of person who makes mistakes when he's under pressure. Harold leaned back in his chair. You're going to trap him. I'm going to let him trap himself, Clayton corrected. Stephanie hired him to find dirt on me, but she doesn't know that Russell has already approached 3 of my competitors trying to sell information about my clients. Industrial espionage, violation of attorney-client privilege, conspiracy to commit corporate sabotage. The charges write themselves. Clayton's phone buzzed with a text from his surveillance team. Subject entering target building now. Right on schedule, Clayton murmured, then looked at Harold. Would you like to watch your daughter destroy her last chance at a normal life? Harold's nod was grim, but resolute. Clayton's conference room had been converted into a monitoring station, with multiple screens showing different angles of the office building where Russell Becker operated his one-man detective agency. Clayton's team had been watching the building for days, documenting everyone who came and went. At 2:17 p.m., Stephanie entered the building wearing dark sunglasses and a baseball cap, a disguise that might fool casual observers but was useless against professional surveillance. She was carrying a manila envelope that Clayton's sources confirmed contained every piece of personal information she'd gathered about him during their relationship. She's giving him everything, Harold said, watching his daughter on screen. Bank account numbers, client names, personal habits, everything she learned while you trusted her. Clayton's expression remained calm. She's also committing several felonies in the process. Conspiracy to commit identity theft, attempted corporate espionage, and violation of privacy laws. Russell doesn't realize it yet, but he's about to become an accessory to federal crimes. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. When Stephanie left, she looked confident for the first time since the wedding disaster. She thought she'd finally found a way to strike back at the man who'd humiliated her. What she didn't know was that Russell's office was under FBI surveillance as part of an ongoing investigation into his previous activities. Every word of their conversation had been recorded, and every document she provided was now evidence in a federal case. Clayton's phone rang exactly 23 minutes after Stephanie left the building. Clayton, this is Agent Sarah Travis with the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. We need to speak with you about Russell Becker and potential threats to your business. Clayton smiled as he recognized the voice. Sarah Travis, his ex-fiancée from before his military service, now a federal agent investigating the same case. Stephanie's research had been accurate but incomplete. Sarah was indeed divorced and working in law enforcement, but she was also leading the investigation that would ultimately destroy anyone foolish enough to target Clayton's business. Agent Travis, Clayton replied smoothly. I'd be happy to cooperate with your investigation. Should I bring my attorney? That won't be necessary, Sarah replied. This is a courtesy call. We're about to arrest Russell Becker for multiple federal crimes, and we wanted to inform you that your ex-fiancée, Stephanie Holloway, may have unknowingly made herself an accessory. We'll need you to review some evidence and confirm which information she would have had access to. Clayton looked at Harold, who was listening to the conversation with growing amazement. I'll be there within the hour, Clayton said. After hanging up, Harold shook his head slowly. You knew this would happen. I engineered this to happen, Clayton corrected. Stephanie thinks she's playing chess, but she's actually playing checkers against a grandmaster. Every move she makes leads her deeper into legal jeopardy. Harold was quiet for a moment. What happens to her now? That depends on how much she cooperates with the FBI investigation, Clayton replied. If she's smart, she'll accept a plea agreement and testify against Russell. If she's stubborn, she'll go to prison for conspiracy and espionage charges. In either way, her life as she knew it is over. Clayton's smile was cold but satisfied. Her life as she knew it ended the moment she decided to betray my trust. Everything since then has just been consequences catching up to her choices. As they prepare to leave for the FBI office, Clayton's phone buzzed with another message. This one from an unknown number. Clayton, it's Aaron. We need to talk. I have information about Stephanie that you need to know. She's planning something worse than what you've seen so far. Harold read the message over Clayton's shoulder. Is he telling the truth? Clayton studied the message for a long moment, then replied with a single word. Where? The response came immediately. Riverside Park, East Bench, 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone. This is bigger than you know. Clayton showed the message to Harold, who frowned deeply. It could be a trap, Harold warned. Probably, Clayton agreed. But Aaron's too desperate to be clever right now. His creditors are closing in. The FBI is investigating his connection to Russell, and he knows I have enough evidence to destroy him completely. If he's reaching out, it's because he's terrified of something worse than me. What could be worse than you? Clayton's laugh was genuinely amused. Harold, you're about to learn something important about human nature. There's always someone more dangerous lurking in the shadows. The question is whether Aaron has stumbled into their web, or whether Stephanie has been playing a much deeper game than either of us realized. Chapter 6. The Deeper Game. Riverside Park at 8 p.m. was nearly deserted, the autumn chill keeping most evening joggers and dog walkers inside. Clayton arrived 15 minutes early, using the time to scout the area and position his security team at strategic points. Aaron might be desperate enough to arrange an ambush, but Clayton had survived too many actual wars to be caught off guard in a city park. Aaron appeared exactly on time, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, his expensive fitness clothing replaced by a worn hoodie and jeans. He moved cautiously toward the bench, constantly checking over his shoulder. "You came," Aaron said as he sat down, maintaining distance between them. "You said you had information," Clayton replied, his voice neutral. "Talk." Aaron pulled out a burner phone and showed Clayton a series of text messages. "These are from Stephanie. She sent them this morning." Clayton read the messages, his expression growing darker with each line. "Aaron, I know you think this is over, but it's just beginning." Clayton thinks he's won, but he has no idea who he's really dealing with. "Meet me at the warehouse district tonight. I have a proposition that will make us both rich and bury Clayton permanently." "She wants revenge that badly?" Clayton asked. "It's not just revenge," Aaron said, his voice shaking slightly. "Clayton, Stephanie isn't who you think she is. Her real name is Stephanie Morrison. Holloway is her stepfather's name." Clayton's mind immediately shifted into operational mode. "Explain." "Her biological father is Jerome Morrison. Does that name mean anything to you?" It did. Jerome Morrison had been a defense contractor who'd attempted to sell classified military technology to foreign buyers 8 years ago. Clayton's security firm had been hired to investigate suspicious activities at Morrison's company, and Clayton's evidence had led to Morrison's arrest and conviction. Morrison had died in federal prison 3 years ago, but not before swearing revenge against everyone who destroyed his life. "She's Morrison's daughter," Clayton said, the pieces falling into place. "More than that," Aaron continued. "She's been planning this for years. The charity gala where you met? She researched everyone who'd be there and targeted you specifically. Our relationship, the engagement, everything, it was all designed to get close enough to destroy you." Clayton felt a cold rage building, but his voice remained controlled. "How long have you known?" "I suspected something was wrong a few months ago, but she didn't tell me the truth until last week. She said once you were humiliated and financially ruined, we could disappear together with whatever money she managed to steal." "But Clayton," Aaron's voice broke slightly. "She never planned to take me with her. I was just another tool." "Prove it." Aaron pulled out a small recording device. "I've been recording our conversations since I figured out what was really happening. She admitted everything. Her real identity, her father's death, her plan to bankrupt you and frame you for criminal activities." Clayton took the device and pocketed it. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because she's not done," Aaron said desperately. "The FBI investigation, the public humiliation, none of that was the real plan. She wanted you to think you'd won, so you'd let your guard down. Tonight, she's meeting with people who can make you disappear permanently." Clayton's blood chilled. "What people?" "Mercenaries. Professional killers. She used some of her father's old contacts to hire them. The plan is to make it look like a business rivalry gone wrong. Someone you exposed or destroyed decided to get even." Clayton was already reaching for his phone to contact a security team when Aaron grabbed his arm. "There's more," Aaron said urgently. "Harold is in danger too. She blames him for choosing you over her. The foundation, your friendship with him. She sees it as the ultimate betrayal." Clayton's phone was buzzing with an incoming call. The caller ID showed Harold's number. Harold, Clayton answered. Clayton, thank God. Harold's voice was tense and frightened. Someone broke into my house. They didn't take anything, but they left a message on my computer. Your daughter wants to see you. Warehouse District, Building 47. Come alone or your friend dies. Clayton was already moving toward his car. Harold, do not go to that warehouse. Call 911 immediately and get to the police station. I can't let anything happen to you because of my daughter's choices, Harold protested. And I can't let anything happen to you because of mine, Clayton replied. Get to safety. That's an order. Clayton hung up and turned to Aaron. You're coming with me. What? No, I'm not going anywhere near. Aaron, Clayton's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. You helped create this situation. Now you're going to help me end it. The warehouse district was a maze of abandoned industrial buildings on the outskirts of Denver. Building 47 was a former textile manufacturing plant that had been empty for over a decade. Clayton's surveillance team had already identified at least 6 armed men positioned around the building, along with 2 vehicles that didn't belong to the neighborhood. Clayton parked 3 blocks away and pulled on a tactical vest while Aaron watched nervously. What are you doing? Aaron asked. What I should have done the moment I learned about Stephanie's betrayal, Clayton replied, checking his sidearm. I'm ending this permanently. You can't just kill them. You're not a murderer. Clayton's laugh was cold. Aaron, I spent 8 years in special forces eliminating threats to national security. These people are threatening me, Harold, and potentially every client who's ever trusted me with sensitive information. This isn't murder, it's pest control. Clayton's earpiece crackled with updates from his surveillance team. 6 targets confirmed. They're expecting someone to walk through the front door. Classic ambush setup. Any sign of Stephanie? Negative. She's either inside or this is a setup to draw you out. Clayton studied the building layout on his tablet. The old textile plant had multiple entrances, several levels, and plenty of cover for a tactical approach. But it also had too many hiding spots for hostages. Change of plans, Clayton announced. Aaron, you're going to call Stephanie and tell her you want to meet. Tell her you're ready to help her finish this. But you want to see her first before you do anything to me. She'll never believe that. She'll believe it because she's desperate and because you're going to be very convincing, Clayton replied, handing Aaron a script he'd typed on his phone. Read this exactly. Every word. Aaron looked at the script and paled. This will make her think I've captured you. That's the idea. Once she reveals her location, my team moves in. And if she doesn't believe me, Clayton's smile was predatory. Then we'll have to be more creative. Chapter 7. The hunt begins. Aaron's hands trembled as he dialed Stephanie's number, reading from Clayton's script while the most dangerous man he'd ever known listened to every word. The phone rang twice before Stephanie's voice answered, tense and suspicious. Aaron, how did you get this number? Steph, it's me. I've got him. Aaron's voice shook, but Clayton nodded approvingly. Fear would make the performance more convincing. Got who? Aaron, where are you? Clayton. I've got Clayton. He came to meet me at the park like I knew he would. And Aaron paused, looking at Clayton's script. I hit him with a tire iron. He's unconscious in my trunk. Stephanie's intake of breath was audible. You're lying. I'm tired of running, Steph. Tired of being afraid. You want revenge? Let's finish this tonight. But I want to see you first. I want to know this is real between us before I cross a line I can't come back from. There was a long pause. Clayton could hear voices in the background, male voices speaking in low, urgent tones. Where are you? Stephanie asked finally. The old warehouse district. I'm in the parking lot of Building 52. It's empty, quiet. Perfect place to finish this. Another pause. Clayton's surveillance team was already moving to Building 52, preparing to track wherever Stephanie was coming from. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Stephanie said. Aaron, I'm proud of you. This is what I needed to see, that you're strong enough to stand with me. I love you, Steph. Everything I've done has been for you. I know, baby. I'll see you soon. The line went dead. Aaron slumped forward, exhaustion and stress finally overwhelming him. She bought it, he said weakly. Phase 1 complete, Clayton replied. already coordinating with his team through his earpiece. Now we find out where she's been hiding and who she's working with. Clayton's surveillance specialist, Timothy Glover, reported through the communication system. 3 vehicles just left the warehouse district, heading toward Building 52. 2 SUVs and a sedan. 6 occupants total, all armed. Any sign of Stephanie? Sedan has a single female passenger matching the target's description. Clayton smiled coldly. Stephanie had taken the bait completely, and now he would finally see the full extent of her operation. But first, he needed to ensure Harold's safety. Timothy, status on Harold Holloway. Secure at police headquarters. Detective Jeremiah Phelps is personally handling his protection detail. Clayton's relationship with the Denver Police Department was complicated but functional. Several detectives owed him favors for information that had closed major cases, and Detective Phelps was one of his most reliable contacts in law enforcement. Good. Aaron, you're going to drive to Building 52 and wait for Stephanie exactly as planned. My team will be positioned to record everything and move in when necessary. Aaron's face went white. You want me to actually meet her? With armed mercenaries? Aaron, you helped create this mess by betraying my trust and enabling Stephanie's deception. Now you're going to help clean it up. Besides, Clayton's voice turned menacing. If you try to run or warn her, my people will stop you permanently. Your only path to survival runs through complete cooperation. The threat was clear and absolute. Aaron nodded reluctantly, understanding that he was trapped between Stephanie's dangerous plan and Clayton's ruthless efficiency. Building 52 was another abandoned warehouse, but unlike Building 47, it had multiple exits and clear sight lines that would allow Clayton's team to control the situation. Aaron parked in the center of the empty lot, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he waited. Clayton watched from a concealed position 200 yards away, communicating with his team through encrypted radios. All units, maintain position until we have positive identification of all targets. I want to know exactly who Stephanie brought to this party. The first SUV arrived at 9:43 p.m., circling the building twice before parking at the far end of the lot. 2 men emerged, professionals by their movement and positioning. They carried themselves like military contractors, experienced in violence and comfortable with weapons. The second SUV positioned itself to block the main exit. 2 more men deployed, taking overwatch positions that could cover the entire lot. Their coordination spoke of extensive training and experience. Finally, Stephanie's sedan pulled up next to Aaron's car. Through his scope, Clayton could see her face clearly for the first time since the cathedral incident. Gone was any pretense of the sweet, innocent woman he'd fallen in love with. Her expression was cold, calculating, and filled with murderous intent. She approached Aaron's car, cautiously, scanning the area before tapping on his window. Aaron lowered it, and even from 200 yards away, Clayton could hear their conversation through the surveillance equipment. "Where is he?" Stephanie demanded. "In the trunk," Aaron replied, his voice steady despite his fear. "But Steph, we need to talk first. About us, about what happens after tonight. Show me first." Aaron got out of the car and walked to the trunk, Stephanie following. He popped it open, revealing the empty space, and Stephanie's expression immediately shifted to rage and suspicion. "You lied to me," she snarled. "I had to," Aaron said desperately. "Steph, he knows everything. He knows about your real father, about the plan, about the mercenaries. We need to run tonight before." "Before what?" Clayton's voice cut through the darkness as he emerged from the shadows, his weapon trained on Stephanie. "Before you murder an innocent man to satisfy your daddy's posthumous revenge fantasy?" Stephanie spun toward him, her hand moving towards something in her jacket, but laser sights from multiple directions suddenly painted red dots across her body. "I wouldn't," Clayton advised calmly. "My team has been watching you for the past hour. We know exactly where your hired killers are positioned, and they're currently being detained by federal agents." It was true. While Stephanie had been focused on Aaron's phone call, Clayton had contacted Agent Sarah Travis with a warehouse location and evidence of an active conspiracy to commit murder. The FBI's tactical team had surrounded Building 47 and arrested the mercenaries before they realized their target had never intended to appear. "You son of a bitch," Stephanie hissed. "You think you've won? You destroyed my father, destroyed my family, and you think there won't be consequences? Your father destroyed himself when he chose to sell military secrets to foreign governments," Clayton replied. "I just made sure he couldn't endanger any more American soldiers. And you destroyed yourself when you chose revenge over justice." Stephanie's laugh was bitter and unhinged. "Justice? You call what happened to my family justice? My father was a patriot who saw how corrupt the military-industrial complex had become. He was trying to level the playing field. He was trying to profit from treason," Clayton corrected. "And now his daughter is following in his footsteps." Police sirens were approaching in the distance. Agent Travis and her team were closing in to arrest Stephanie for conspiracy to commit murder, along with the various federal crimes connected to her revenge plot. But Stephanie wasn't finished. "Clayton, you think this ends with my arrest? You have no idea how deep this goes. My father had partners, people who believed in his cause. This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Clayton said firmly. "Your father is dead. His network was dismantled years ago, and you're about to spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Your revenge dies with your freedom." As the FBI vehicles surrounded the parking lot, Stephanie made one final desperate play. She pulled a small device from her jacket, a dead man's switch connected to explosives. "If I can't have my revenge," she screamed, "then everyone dies tonight." Clayton's response was immediate and decisive. The suppressed gunshot dropped Stephanie instantly, the device flying from her hand to clatter harmlessly across the asphalt. His military training had taught him to neutralize threats without hesitation, and Stephanie Morrison had just graduated from annoyance to lethal danger. Agent Travis was the first to reach them, weapon drawn, but lowered when she saw the situation was contained. "Clayton, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Sarah. Aaron needs medical attention for shock, and you'll want to check that device for explosives." As the FBI secured the scene, Clayton felt a strange sense of completion. The threat that had stalked him for months was finally eliminated. But he also knew that Stephanie's final words weren't empty threats. Jerome Morrison's network had been extensive, and other survivors might eventually surface seeking their own revenge. For now, though, the immediate danger was over. Justice had been served, and Clayton Cassidy had once again proven that betraying his trust carried permanent consequences. Chapter 8. Total Victory. 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, Clayton sat in his office reviewing the final FBI reports on the Morrison network. Agent Sarah Travis had been thorough in her investigation, uncovering a web of connections that stretched back years and involved multiple criminal enterprises. "The last of Morrison's associates was arrested in Miami yesterday," Sarah reported during their weekly briefing. "Marcus Webb, former CIA operative turned arms dealer. He'd been planning to continue Stephanie's work, but our surveillance caught him meeting with known terrorists." Clayton nodded, satisfied. "Any remaining threats?" "None that we can identify. The Morrison network is completely dismantled. Your actions in the warehouse saved dozens of lives and potentially prevented a major terrorist attack." Harold knocked on the office door, entering with his weekly Foundation report. At 73, he looked healthier and more focused than he had in years. Running the Truth Foundation had given him a sense of purpose that retirement had lacked. "The Foundation processed 47 cases this week," Harold announced. "We've exposed 12 cheating spouses, prevented 3 marriage frauds, and helped 6 families avoid financial scams. The success rate is unprecedented." Clayton smiled with genuine satisfaction. The Foundation had become more successful than he'd initially envisioned, serving as both a public service and a powerful deterrent to anyone considering romantic fraud in the Denver area. "Any interesting cases?" Clayton asked. "Actually, yes. A wealthy widow contacted us about her new boyfriend, a charming younger man who seemed too good to be true. Our investigation revealed he was running the same scam on 5 different women simultaneously. Outcome: all 5 women are pressing charges. He's looking at 15 years for fraud and identity theft. Clayton's reputation had only grown stronger following the Morrison affair. Corporate clients now viewed him as someone who could handle threats they couldn't even imagine, and his security consulting business had expanded internationally. But perhaps the most satisfying development was Aaron Gillespie's transformation. Following his cooperation with the FBI and his role in exposing Stephanie's murder plot, Aaron had entered a federal witness protection program. More importantly, he'd undergone extensive therapy for his gambling addiction and had emerged as a genuinely reformed man. Clayton's phone buzzed with a message from Aaron, now living under a new identity in Oregon, 6 months clean from gambling. Started a nonprofit helping other addicts. Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right. Clayton showed the message to Harold, who smiled approvingly. Redemption is possible, even for people who make terrible choices. For some people, Clayton corrected, Aaron made mistakes driven by weakness and addiction. Stephanie made choices driven by hatred and revenge. There's a difference. The difference had become even clearer during the FBI's psychological evaluation of Stephanie before her death. The report revealed a deeply disturbed individual who had spent years planning elaborate revenge scenarios, not just against Clayton, but against anyone she perceived as having wronged her family. She had detailed files on over 30 people, Sarah had explained. Judges, prosecutors, FBI agents, military officials, anyone connected to her father's case. Clayton, you weren't her only target. You were just the first. The realization that he'd prevented a potential massacre had shifted Clayton's perspective on the entire affair. What he'd initially seen as personal betrayal had actually been a much larger threat to public safety. Detective Jeremiah Phelps visited Clayton's office that afternoon with an update on related cases. The weapons cache we found in Stephanie's storage unit would have armed a small military unit. She'd been planning something catastrophic. Any idea what her ultimate target was? Based on her journals and computer files, she wanted to bomb the federal courthouse during a ceremony honoring her father's victims. She estimated it would have killed over 200 people, including several families of soldiers who died because of her father's treason. Clayton felt a cold satisfaction knowing that his actions had prevented such a tragedy. Justice wasn't just about personal revenge. It was about protecting innocent people from dangerous predators. The knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant announced that he had a visitor, someone he wasn't expecting. Jerome Morrison Jr. walked into Clayton's office with the calm confidence of a man who'd spent years planning this moment. He was Stephanie's older brother, a successful attorney who'd legally changed his name years ago to distance himself from his father's crimes. Mr. Cassidy, Jerome said, extending his hand. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. Clayton studied the man carefully, noting the family resemblance, but also the fundamental differences in bearing and presentation. Where Stephanie had projected false sweetness over hidden malice, Jerome appeared genuinely professional and direct. What can I do for you, Mr. Morrison? Actually, it's Jerome Whitman now. I changed my name after our father's arrest to protect my legal career. I wanted to thank you personally for stopping my sister before she could hurt more innocent people. Clayton raised an eyebrow. That's not what I expected to hear from Jerome Morrison's son. Jerome sat down uninvited, his expression serious. Mr. Cassidy, I love my sister, but I wasn't blind to what she'd become. When our father was arrested, I accepted that he'd made choices that destroyed our family. Stephanie never accepted it. She spent years consumed by rage and fantasies of revenge. You knew about her plans? I suspected she was planning something, but I had no idea how far she'd gone until the FBI contacted me after her death. When I saw the evidence, the weapons, the target list, the detailed murder plans, I realized that you didn't just defend yourself. You prevented a terrorist attack. Jerome pulled out a legal document and placed it on Clayton's desk. This is a formal statement clearing you of any wrongdoing in my sister's death. It also includes evidence that she'd threatened my own family when I refused to help her. Clayton scanned the document, noting its thoroughness and legal precision. Why are you doing this? Because justice matters more than family loyalty, Jerome replied. My father chose treason over duty. My sister chose revenge over healing. I'm choosing to break the cycle. And professionally, this can't be easy for your legal career." Jerome's smile was rueful. "Actually, several firms have approached me about joining their white-collar defense practices. Apparently, having a family member who is a cautionary tale about the consequences of criminal behavior makes me valuable in convincing clients to cooperate with authorities." Clayton found himself respecting Jerome's pragmatic approach to his family's legacy. "What happens now? Now I live my life according to my own principles, not my father's failures or my sister's hatred. And I wanted you to know that not everyone in the Morrison family believes in revenge over justice." After Jerome left, Clayton reflected on the complex dynamics of family loyalty and personal responsibility. Harold had chosen to support justice over his daughter's criminal behavior. Aaron had chosen redemption over continued deception. Jerome had chosen his own principles over family legacy. The foundation received its largest donation ever that week, an anonymous contribution of $5 million with a simple note: "For truth in all relationships, romantic and familial." Clayton suspected the donation came from Jerome Whitman, but he didn't investigate. Some gestures of support deserve privacy and respect. As evening approached, Clayton walked through his office building, observing the controlled efficiency of his expanding empire. The security consulting business now operated on 3 continents. The Truth Foundation had inspired similar organizations in 12 other cities. His reputation as someone who never forgot a betrayal had become a powerful deterrent against corporate espionage and romantic fraud. But perhaps most importantly, he learned to distinguish between justice and revenge, between necessary action and excessive retaliation. Stephanie Morrison had deserved to face consequences for her actions, but those consequences were proportional to her crimes and served to protect others. Clayton Cassidy had won completely, but he'd won by being better than his enemies, not by becoming them. Chapter 9: Legacy of Truth. 2 years after the Morrison affair, Clayton stood before the Denver City Council as they officially recognized the Truth Foundation as a model for national implementation. The foundation had prevented over 300 cases of romantic fraud, exposed dozens of financial scams, and helped law enforcement solve numerous cold cases involving identity theft and marriage fraud. The foundation's success rate is unprecedented, Mayor Patricia Graham announced to the assembled crowd. In 2 years, they've saved Denver residents over $40 million in potential fraud losses and prevented countless cases of emotional and financial devastation. Harold sat in the front row, wearing a new suit and the kind of satisfied expression that came from meaningful work. At 75, he'd found his true calling in protecting others from the kind of betrayal his daughter had represented. Clayton's acceptance speech was brief and precise. The Truth Foundation exists because deception destroys lives, families, and communities. We've proven that with proper investigation and evidence, truth always prevails over manipulation. We're honored to serve this community and protect innocent people from predators who prey on trust and love. The audience included several faces that had become important parts of Clayton's life over the past 2 years. Agent Sarah Travis sat with her new husband, a fellow FBI agent she'd met during the Morrison investigation. Detective Jeremiah Phelps had been promoted to captain and now oversaw the police department's fraud division. Even Jerome Whitman attended, representing the legal community's support for the foundation's work. After the ceremony, Clayton hosted a reception at his office building. The gathering included clients, law enforcement contacts, and foundation supporters, a network of people united by their commitment to truth and justice. Aaron Gillespie attended virtually, joining by video call from his new home in Portland. His nonprofit for gambling addiction recovery had expanded to serve 3 states, and he'd become a respected advocate for rehabilitation over punishment. "Clayton," Aaron said during his brief remarks, "2 years ago, I was a broken man who'd betrayed his closest friend and nearly destroyed his own life. Today, I'm helping other people find their way back from similar mistakes. That transformation was only possible because you showed me that accountability and redemption can coexist." Clayton nodded acknowledgement. Aaron's journey had been difficult but genuine, proving that some people could learn from their mistakes and become better than their worst choices. The most meaningful moment came when Harold presented Clayton with a special recognition from the families they'd helped. This plaque represents over 1,000 people who avoided financial, emotional, or physical harm because of the foundation's work. You've created something that will protect innocent people for generations. Clayton accepted the recognition with genuine gratitude. Building something larger than personal success had given his life a satisfaction that wealth and reputation alone couldn't provide. As the reception wound down, Clayton found himself in conversation with Dr. Emma Washington, a psychologist who'd helped develop the Foundation's victim support programs. Clayton, I have to ask, do you ever wonder what might have happened if you'd handled the Morrison situation differently? If you tried to help Stephanie instead of exposing her? Clayton considered the question seriously. Dr. Washington, I spent months trying to understand why someone I loved could plan such elaborate deception. The investigation into her background revealed years of manipulation, fraud, and escalating criminal behavior. Stephanie Morrison wasn't a troubled woman who made a mistake. She was a predator who'd spent her adult life destroying other people's lives. But surely some intervention could have prevented the terrorist attack she was planning. Clayton interrupted gently. The weapons cache, the target lists, the detailed plans to murder hundreds of innocent people. Some people can't be saved because they don't want salvation. They want destruction. Dr. Washington nodded slowly. You're right, of course. It's just difficult to accept that some people are beyond redemption. The difficult truth is that redemption requires genuine remorse and a willingness to change, Clayton replied. Aaron had both. Stephanie had neither. My job isn't to save everyone. It's to protect the innocent from those who can't be saved. Later that evening, Clayton sat in his private office reviewing the Foundation's expansion plans. They'd received requests from law enforcement agencies in 15 states to establish similar programs. The model was scalable and effective, proving that truth-based investigation could prevent crime more efficiently than traditional reactive policing. His personal security business continued to thrive, but Clayton found himself increasingly focused on the Foundation's mission. Protecting people from romantic and financial predators felt more meaningful than corporate security consulting, though both served important purposes. Clayton's phone rang with a call from an unlisted number. He answered cautiously, unsure who would contact him through such secure channels. Mr. Cassidy, this is Secretary of Homeland Security Dave Maxwell. I hope you have a moment to discuss a matter of national importance. Clayton straightened, recognizing the name from his government contacts. Of course, Mr. Secretary. The Truth Foundation's success has attracted attention at the highest levels of government. We're seeing a massive increase in romance scams targeting military families, federal employees, and defense contractors. These operations appear to be coordinated by foreign intelligence services seeking to compromise American security personnel. Clayton immediately understood the implications. You want to expand the Foundation's mission to include counterintelligence operations. Exactly. We're prepared to provide significant federal funding and resources to help you identify and neutralize these threats before they compromise national security. Your track record suggests you're uniquely qualified for this type of work. Clayton smiled, recognizing the opportunity to serve his country while expanding the Foundation's protective mission. I'd be honored to discuss the details. Excellent. We'll arrange a briefing at the federal building next week. Mr. Cassidy, your work in Denver has already prevented multiple security breaches that we're only now fully understanding. This expansion could protect thousands of American families and preserve countless military secrets. After the call ended, Clayton reflected on how far he'd traveled from the broken man standing in an altar 2 years ago. Stephanie Morrison's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also revealed his true calling, protecting innocent people from predators who exploited trust and love for personal gain. Harold knocked on the door and entered with the evening security report. Building is secure, all staff have departed safely, and tomorrow's schedule is confirmed. Harold, how do you feel about expanding our operations to serve military families nationwide? Harold's eyes lit up with interest. That sounds like exactly the kind of work this foundation was meant to do. When do we start? Clayton looked out his office window at the Denver skyline, thinking about all the innocent people who would sleep safely tonight because predators knew the Truth Foundation was watching. Tomorrow, that protection would begin expanding across the entire country. We start by remembering that truth always wins, Clayton said. It just needs the right people fighting for it. The Truth Foundation's motto, inscribed on the wall behind Clayton's desk, captured the essence of everything they'd built. In truth we trust, in justice we serve, in love we protect. Clayton Cassidy had won more than personal victory over his betrayers. He'd created a legacy that would protect innocent people from deception and manipulation for generations to come. The wedding that never was had become the foundation for something far more valuable than marriage, a commitment to truth that could never be broken by lies. And in the end, that was the most complete victory possible, turning personal betrayal into public service, transforming private pain into protection for others, and proving that truth, once defended properly, could never again be defeated by deception. The man who'd once trusted blindly had become the guardian who helped others see clearly. And that transformation was worth more than any revenge could ever be. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Lie. The suburban neighborhood of Willowbrook seemed frozen in time, with its perfectly manicured lawns and white picket fences. For 12 years, Danny Rourke had called this place home, building what he believed was an unshakable foundation with his wife Rebecca and their twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, now 10 years old. Danny owned Rourke Security Solutions, a private investigation and personal security firm he'd built from the ground up after leaving the military. His background as a special forces operative had taught him patience, precision, and the art of reading people. These skills had made him wealthy, respected, and unfortunately for his enemies, very dangerous when crossed. Rebecca Martinez Rourke had been the perfect wife on paper. A former marketing executive who'd given up her career to raise their daughters. She maintained their home with military precision and hosted neighborhood gatherings that were the envy of Willowbrook. Her dark hair and warm smile had captivated Danny 12 years ago at a charity gala, and he'd pursued her with the same intensity he'd once reserved for military missions. The twins, Emma and Sophie, were Danny's pride and joy. Emma, the older by 3 minutes, had inherited his analytical mind and love of puzzles. Sophie was the artist, always drawing or painting, her creative spirit reminding Danny of his own mother. He'd spent countless hours teaching them self-defense, helping with homework, and building an elaborate treehouse in their backyard that had become the neighborhood's marvel. But beneath the surface of their perfect life, cracks had been forming for months. Danny's trained, I had begun noticing small inconsistencies. Rebecca's phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room, unexplained absences during her book club meetings, and a distance in her eyes that she couldn't quite hide. His instincts, honed by years of investigation work, whispered warnings he chose to ignore, hoping love could overcome whatever shadows lurked in their marriage. The morning of what would become the last Father's Day started like any other. Danny woke early, as was his habit, and found Rebecca already in the kitchen preparing his coffee exactly how he liked it. Black, no sugar. The twins were still asleep, and the house held that peaceful quiet he'd grown to cherish. "Happy Father's Day, baby," Rebecca said, kissing his cheek with what seemed like genuine affection. But Danny's trained senses caught something else, a nervous energy, like someone playing a role they'd rehearsed. "Thank you, sweetheart," he replied, studying her face. "Any special plans today?" "Just family time," she answered quickly, avoiding his gaze. "The girls have something special planned for you later." As the day progressed, Danny noticed more small details that didn't add up. Rebecca kept checking her phone with an urgency that seemed out of place for a relaxed family Sunday. The twins, usually chatty and excited about surprises, seemed coached in their responses, speaking in careful, measured tones that didn't match their natural personalities. During lunch, Danny's phone rang. It was Trevor Blake, his business partner and closest friend since their military days. Trevor's security firm handled corporate clients while Danny focused on private investigations, but they shared resources and trusted each other implicitly. "Danny, I need to talk to you." Trevor's voice carried an unusual tension. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the office?" "It's Father's Day, Trev. Can it wait until tomorrow?" "No, brother. It can't. Trust me on this." Danny glanced at Rebecca, who was pretending not to listen, while wiping the same spot on the counter for the third time. "I'll be there in an hour." The drive to his office gave Danny time to think. Trevor wasn't the type to interrupt family time without good reason. As he pulled into the parking lot of the building that housed Rourke Security Solutions, he saw Trevor's car already there, along with another vehicle he didn't recognize. Inside, Trevor wasn't alone. A woman in her 40s with graying hair and tired eyes sat across from his desk. She introduced herself as Patricia Kellner, a private investigator from the next county. "Mr. Rourke," Patricia began, "I've been hired by a client to investigate a missing person case. During my investigation, I've uncovered information that I believe you need to see." She placed a manila folder on the desk between them. "Your wife has been meeting regularly with a man named Vincent Castellano. They've been seen together at various locations over the past 8 months." Danny's face remained impassive, but his hands clenched slightly. "Go on." "Vincent Castellano is a former associate of yours from your military days. He was discharged dishonorably for conduct violations and has since worked as a freelance security consultant. More importantly, Mr. Rourke, my investigation suggests he may be the biological father of your twin daughters." The words hit Danny like a physical blow, but years of training kept his expression neutral. "What evidence do you have?" Patricia opened the folder, revealing photographs, documents, and a detailed timeline. Medical records show Rebecca was treated at a clinic in Nevada 11 years ago, around the time of conception. Vincent Castellano was also in Nevada during that period, working a security contract. There are also these. She handed him several photographs showing Rebecca and Vincent in intimate embraces, taken at various locations over recent months. The final photograph showed Vincent entering Danny's own home while Danny was away on business. Trevor leaned forward. "Patricia came to me first because she knew our firms sometimes cooperate. I thought you should hear this from a friend." Danny studied the evidence with the same methodical approach he used in his professional work. The timeline made sense. Rebecca's sudden desire to visit her sick aunt in Nevada 11 years ago. The twins' unusual eye color that didn't match either his or Rebecca's family. Vincent's unexpected appearance in their city 8 months ago, around the time Rebecca's behavior began changing. "There's more," Patricia continued. "I have audio recordings from their meetings. They've been planning something for today. Vincent has been pressing Rebecca to tell you the truth and leave you for him. They believe you'll be too shocked and heartbroken to fight for custody or cause problems." Danny's laugh was cold and humorless. "They clearly don't know me very well." He stood up, his mind already formulating plans. "Patricia, I need copies of everything. Trevor, I need you to implement Protocol 7. Trevor's eyes widened. Protocol 7 was their code for complete surveillance and investigation of a target, typically reserved for their most serious corporate espionage cases. "Danny, are you sure?" Protocol 7 is dash. Comprehensive, invasive, and thorough, Danny finished. "Exactly what I need. I want to know everything about Vincent Castellano, his finances, his contacts, his weaknesses, his fears. Everything." As Danny drove home, his phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "The girls are so excited to give you your Father's Day surprise. Come home soon. Red heart." He stared at the heart emoji, feeling a cold fury building in his chest. For 12 years, he'd built his life around what he thought was his family. He'd loved those girls as his own, protected them, provided for them, shaped their futures. And now he was about to learn that it had all been built on the most fundamental lie possible. But Vincent and Rebecca had made one crucial mistake. They assumed Danny would react like a normal, heartbroken husband. They didn't understand that they were dealing with a man who'd spent years in the world's most dangerous places, who'd learned that the difference between predator and prey often came down to who struck first and who struck hardest. As he pulled into his driveway, Danny saw the twins' faces pressed against the living room window, watching for his return. Despite everything, his heart clenched. Whatever sins Rebecca and Vincent had committed, those girls had been innocent children caught in the middle. But innocence, Danny had learned long ago, was often the first casualty of war. Chapter 2. The Revelation. Danny entered his home with the measured calm of a man who'd learned to compartmentalize extreme emotions. The living room had been decorated with handmade Father's Day banners, and the twins rushed toward him with barely contained excitement. "Daddy! Daddy!" Sophie grabbed his hand while Emma bounced on her toes. "We have the best surprise ever for you." Looking at their faces, Danny searched for any resemblance to himself, any feature that might contradict Patricia's devastating evidence. Emma's green eyes. He'd always assumed they came from Rebecca's grandmother. Sophie's dimpled chin. Rebecca had claimed it skipped generations in her family. Now, every explanation felt like another carefully constructed lie. "I can't wait to see it," he managed, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, wearing the blue sundress he'd bought her for their anniversary. Her smile seemed brighter than usual, almost manic in its intensity. "Honey, before the girls give you their surprise, why don't you sit down? I'll get you a beer." Danny settled into his favorite armchair, the same spot where he'd read bedtime stories, helped with homework, and bandaged scraped knees. The irony wasn't lost on him that this might be where his world officially ended. Emma stepped forward, holding a homemade card decorated with glitter and crayon drawings. Her voice was unusually formal as she began to speak, as if reciting lines she'd memorized. "Happy Father's Day, Daddy. This is our last Father's Day with you." Danny's blood turned to ice, but he kept his expression neutral. "Last Father's Day? Are you planning to grow up that fast?" Sophie giggled nervously and shook her head. "No, silly, because you're not our real daddy." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Danny felt something fundamental shift inside him, like a switch being flipped from protection mode to predator mode. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" His voice remained gentle, though his hands gripped the armrest of his chair. Emma opened the card and held it up for him to see. Inside, along with childish drawings of stick figures, someone had glued a photograph. The picture showed a man Danny recognized all too well, Vincent Castellano, in his military uniform from 15 years ago. "Mommy showed us pictures of our real father," Emma continued in that same rehearsed tone. "She said you've been taking care of us, but our real daddy is coming home now." Danny's eyes moved to Rebecca, who stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her face pale but determined. "Rebecca." His voice carried a quiet authority that made her flinch. In 12 years of marriage, she'd heard that tone only a handful of times, usually when he was dealing with a serious security threat for a client. "Danny, we need to talk." "Yes," he said softly. "We do." The doorbell rang, its chime echoing through the suddenly silent house. Danny didn't move, his gaze fixed on his wife's face as she visibly steeled herself. "That's him," she whispered. Sophie clapped her hands excitedly. "Our real daddy is here." Danny stood slowly, every movement deliberate and controlled. "Girls, go to your room. Now." Something in his tone cut through their excitement. Emma, always the more perceptive of the twins, grabbed Sophie's hand and pulled her toward the stairs. "But Daddy, now." The single word carried enough authority to send both girls scurrying upstairs. Rebecca moved toward the front door, but Danny's voice stopped her. "Don't." She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. "Danny, please. Let me explain. You've had 11 years to explain. You chose to wait until today." He walked past her toward the door, noting how she pressed herself against the wall as he passed. "Interesting timing, Rebecca. Father's Day. very theatrical. Danny opened the front door to find Vincent Castellano standing on his porch, holding a bouquet of flowers and wearing a confident smile that faltered when he saw Danny's expression. Vincent was exactly as Danny remembered him. 6 feet tall, dark hair, now showing gray at the temples, still maintaining the physical fitness of someone who took pride in his appearance. But where Danny's eyes held the cold calculation of a professional, Vincent's showed the desperation of a man trying to reclaim something he'd lost. "Hello, Vincent." "Danny." Vincent's voice carried false bravado. "I suppose Rebecca told you I was coming." "She mentioned it." Danny stepped aside with mock courtesy. "Please come in. We have so much to catch up on." As Vincent entered, Danny caught the scent of expensive cologne and nervous sweat. Behind him, Rebecca had moved to the center of the living room, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Vincent brought flowers," she said unnecessarily, her voice high and strained. "How thoughtful." Danny closed the door with deliberate finality, the click of the lock seeming to echo through the room. "Vincent, you look well. Civilian life agrees with you." "Danny, listen." "No." Danny's voice cut through Vincent's attempt at explanation like a blade. "You'll listen. Both of you. For 12 years, I've built my life around what I believed was my family. I've loved those girls, provided for them, protected them, and shaped every decision around their well-being." He moved to the center of the room, positioning himself so he could see both Rebecca and Vincent clearly. "And today, on Father's Day, I discover that everything I've believed about my life has been a lie." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Danny, please. I wanted to tell you so many times, but..." "But what, Rebecca?" "It was more convenient to let me raise another man's children? More profitable? Did you think I was too stupid to ever figure it out?" Vincent stepped forward, his chest puffed with misplaced confidence. "Now hold on, Danny. Those are my daughters, and Rebecca is my woman. She always has been." The room went completely silent. Danny's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "Your woman." Danny's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "That's interesting, Vincent. See, I have some paperwork that says otherwise. Marriage certificates, birth certificates, adoption papers, all bear my name." He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through messages. "I also have some interesting photographs from a private investigator. Would you like to see them?" Rebecca's face went white. "Danny, what have you done?" "What I always do, sweetheart. My homework." He looked up from his phone, his smile cold as winter. "Did you really think you could betray someone who makes his living finding out secrets?" Vincent's confidence was beginning to crack. "Look, Danny, we didn't plan for this to happen. Rebecca and I have history, real history. Those girls deserve to know their real father." "Real father?" Danny's laugh held no humor. "Let me tell you about being a real father, Vincent. A real father is there for midnight fevers and bad dreams. A real father teaches his daughters how to ride bikes and helps them with math homework. A real father protects his family from predators and liars." He stepped closer to Vincent, who involuntarily took a step back. "A real father doesn't abandon his pregnant girlfriend to marry another woman and then come back 11 years later to destroy the only family those children have ever known." Rebecca gasped. "What? Vincent, you said." "Oh, you didn't know?" Danny's smile grew wider. "Vincent here was married when he got you pregnant, Rebecca. His wife filed for divorce 2 years later when she found out about his serial infidelity. Should I tell her about the other women, or would you prefer to Vincent?" The color drained from Vincent's face. That's not relevant, isn't it? See, this is where you two made your mistake. You assumed I'd react like some cuckolded husband in a soap opera. You thought I'd fall apart, maybe beg Rebecca to stay, fight for scraps of a relationship built on lies." Danny's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled genuinely for the first time since entering the house. "Ah, perfect timing. What is that?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely a whisper. "That, my dear wife, is confirmation that phase 1 of my response plan is now complete." He looked between them, his expression almost pleasant. "You see, while you two were planning your little Father's Day revelation, I was implementing some plans of my own. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. What kind of plans? Danny's smile became predatory. The kind that ensures neither of you will ever hurt my daughters again. Chapter 3. The Hunter's Web. The tension in the living room was palpable as Danny's phone continued to buzz with incoming messages. Each notification seemed to drain more color from Rebecca's face and add another layer of unease to Vincent's increasingly aggressive posture. Danny, Rebecca began, her voice trembling, whatever you're planning. Planning? Danny interrupted, his tone mockingly innocent. I'm not planning anything, sweetheart. I'm executing. There's a difference. He gestured for them to sit on the couch, and something in his demeanor made them comply without question. Danny remained standing, a position that gave him both physical and psychological advantage. Let me paint you a picture, he began, pacing slowly in front of them. 11 years ago, Vincent, you were working security for a casino in Nevada. Married man, successful career, reputation intact. You had a brief affair with my wife during her visit to see her sick aunt, who, by the way, I've confirmed was perfectly healthy and had no idea Rebecca was in Nevada. Vincent shifted uncomfortably. Ancient history, Danny. Is it? Because 8 months ago, you moved to this city. Not for work. You could have gotten better contracts in Las Vegas or Los Angeles. You moved here specifically to reconnect with Rebecca and claim the daughters you abandoned. Danny pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through documents. You've been meeting at the Riverside Hotel every Tuesday afternoon. Room 237, specifically. Did you know they have excellent security cameras? Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth. You've been watching us? Sweetheart, I've been watching everything. Your credit card purchases, your phone records, your email accounts, your social media activity. Did you really think the man who built a security empire wouldn't notice when his own wife was compromising operational security? He turned to Vincent. But you, Vincent, you're the real masterpiece. Did you tell Rebecca about your current financial situation? The gambling debts that total just over $200,000? The loan sharks who've been looking for you in Nevada? Vincent shot to his feet. You son of a bitch, you have no right. Sit down. Danny's voice carried such authority that Vincent found himself complying before he realized it. I have every right. You came into my home, destroyed my children's sense of security, and attempted to steal my family. That gives me all the rights I need. Danny's phone rang. He answered without breaking eye contact with his targets. Trevor? Yes, I'm ready for the next phase. Send them in. Rebecca looked confused and terrified. Send who in? Well, Vincent's creditors, for starters. Turns out they've been very interested in his current whereabouts. I may have accidentally let it slip where they could find him. Vincent's face went ashen. You didn't. Oh, but I did. I also contacted your ex-wife, Vincent. She was very interested to learn about your newfound fatherhood claims, especially since you've been 3 years behind on alimony payments. Danny moved to the window and glanced outside. In fact, I believe that's her car pulling up now, followed by what appears to be some very serious-looking gentleman in a black sedan. Vincent rushed to the window, and his legs nearly gave out when he saw the vehicles. Jesus Christ, Danny, what have you done? I've simply connected people who've been looking for you with your current location. Think of it as a public service. Rebecca stood up on shaky legs. Danny, please. The girls are upstairs, safely out of the way. Unlike their mother, I actually consider their well-being in my decision-making. The doorbell rang again, followed immediately by sharp, insistent knocking. Danny moved toward the door with casual confidence. Now, here's what's going to happen, he announced. Vincent, you're going to walk out that door and deal with your past. All of it. The debts, the broken promises, the lives you've damaged. You came here thinking you could destroy my family and walk away clean. Instead, you're going to discover that some people have longer memories and less patience than I do. Vincent grabbed Danny's arm desperately. Come on, man. We served together. That has to count for something. Danny looked down at Vincent's hand until he released his grip. We served together until you were dishonorably discharged for stealing from fellow soldiers and abandoning your post. The Vincent Castellano I knew died the day you chose to become a predator instead of a protector. The knocking became more insistent, and voices could be heard outside. Vincent looked toward the back of the house, clearly considering escape routes. "I wouldn't," Danny advised. "My property is fully monitored, and I've taken the liberty of ensuring all exit routes are covered. Your only choice is how you leave, walking with dignity or carried out by people far less patient than I am." Rebecca sank back onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "What about me, Danny? What about our marriage?" Danny's expression softened slightly, but his eyes remained cold. "Our marriage, Rebecca? Which part was real? The vows where you promised to forsake all others? The adoption papers where you swore I was the girl's father? The 1,000 nights you lied in my face?" He knelt in front of her, his voice becoming almost gentle. "You had choices, Rebecca. When you got pregnant, you could have told me the truth. When Vincent showed up 8 months ago, you could have sent him away. Instead, you chose deception, manipulation, and betrayal." "I was scared," she whispered. "I was young and scared, and Vincent disappeared. You were so good to me, so stable. I thought I could make it work." "You thought wrong." Danny stood back up as the knocking outside became pounding. "You see, Rebecca, I'm not the forgiving type. I've seen what happens when people show mercy to those who betrayed them. It never ends well." Vincent was now visibly sweating, looking between the front door and the stairs leading to the second floor. "What about Emma and Sophie? They're my daughters too." Danny's mask of civility finally slipped, revealing the cold fury beneath. "Those girls are 10 years old, Vincent. For their entire lives, I've been their father. I've earned that title through love, sacrifice, and dedication. You contributed genetic material and then vanished. That doesn't make you a father. It makes you a sperm donor." The pounding stopped, replaced by the sound of keys in the lock. Danny smiled at their confused expressions. "I gave Trevor a spare key. I thought it might be helpful for cleanup." The front door opened, and Trevor entered, followed by Vincent's ex-wife, a hard-looking woman in her 40s, and 2 men in expensive suits whose bulky frames suggested they weren't there for conversation. "Vincent," the woman said, her voice dripping with venom, "you look surprised to see me." One of the suited men consulted a small notebook. "Mr. Castellano, you've been very difficult to locate. Mr. Torino is most displeased with your efforts to avoid your obligations." Vincent backed against the wall, his bravado completely evaporated. "Listen, I can explain." "The time for explanations has passed," Danny interrupted. "Gentlemen, Mrs. Castellano, Vincent is all yours. Please conduct your business away from my property." As the group moved toward Vincent, Danny turned to Rebecca one last time. "You have 1 hour to pack whatever personal items you need. Trevor will escort you to a hotel for the night. Tomorrow, you'll receive divorce papers and custody documentation. My lawyers are very thorough." "Danny, please," Rebecca begged, "don't do this. We can work through this." "We could have worked through many things, Rebecca, but not this. Not lies about my children's paternity. Not 11 years of deception. Not adultery." His voice grew harder with each word. "And certainly not traumatizing my daughters with your twisted version of Father's Day entertainment." As Vincent was forcibly escorted from the house, his protests and pleas echoing from the driveway, Danny finally allowed himself to look tired. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the confrontation was beginning to fade, leaving behind the weight of a shattered world. Rebecca gathered her purse with shaking hands. "What will you tell the girls?" "The truth. That their mother made choices that destroyed our family, and that sometimes people we love disappoint us in ways that can't be forgiven or forgotten." As Trevor gently but firmly guided Rebecca toward the door, she turned back one last time. "I did love you, Danny. I still do." Danny's smile was sad and final. "No, Rebecca, you love what I could provide. Security, stability, a father for your children. But you never loved me enough to tell me the truth." The house fell silent as Danny stood alone in his living room, surrounded by Father's Day decorations and the wreckage of his former life. Upstairs, he could hear the twins moving around, probably confused and frightened by the voices and commotion. But this was only the beginning. Danny had spent his entire adult life learning that decisive action in a moment of crisis determined who survived and who didn't. Vincent and Rebecca had made the mistake of thinking they could outmaneuver a predator. They were about to learn that some men, when pushed too far, didn't just push back, they obliterated everything that threatened what they protected. And Danny was just getting started. Chapter 4, Collateral Damage. 3 days had passed since what Danny had come to think of as the last Father's Day. The house felt different now, quieter, but not peaceful. It was the silence of a battlefield after the shooting stops, when the survivors take inventory of what's been lost. Emma and Sophie sat at the kitchen table, picking at their breakfast. They hadn't spoken much since Danny explained that Mommy had made some bad choices and wouldn't be living with him anymore. He'd kept the explanation age-appropriate, but the twins were smart enough to sense the fundamental shift in their world. "Daddy," Sophie said quietly, "is Mommy ever coming back?" Danny paused in his coffee preparation. In the 72 hours since Rebecca's removal from their lives, he'd fielded dozens of questions from the twins, each one a small knife to his heart. "No, sweetheart, Mommy won't be coming back to live here." Emma, always the more analytical of the two, looked up from her cereal. "What about the man who said he was our real father?" This was the question Danny had been dreading. After Rebecca left, he'd spent hours researching how to handle this situation, consulting with child psychologists and family lawyers. The consensus was clear. The truth, delivered with care, was better than elaborate lies that would eventually crumble. "That man, Vincent, helped create you," Danny said carefully, sitting down at the table with them. "But that doesn't make him your father. A father is someone who takes care of you, who loves you, who's there when you need him. I've been your father since the day you were born, and I always will be." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "But why did Mommy say he was our real daddy?" "Because Mommy was confused about some very important things. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they love." Emma pushed her cereal around her bowl thoughtfully. "Are you still our daddy, even if we came from him?" The question hit Danny like a physical blow. In that moment, looking at these two beautiful girls who'd been the center of his world for 10 years, he realized that biology mattered far less than love. "Emma, Sophie, look at me." He waited until both girls met his eyes. "You are my daughters. That's not going to change because of anything Mommy said or because of anything any other person claims. You're mine, and I'm yours. Forever." For the first time in 3 days, both girls smiled genuinely. Sophie launched herself from her chair into Danny's arms, followed immediately by Emma. As he held them, Danny felt his resolve solidify into something unbreakable. Whatever war Rebecca and Vincent had started, he would finish it, not just for himself, but for these two girls who deserved better than the chaos their biological parents had tried to create. Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Package delivered. Vincent's situation resolved permanently. Rebecca's legal team requesting meeting. Danny typed back, "No meetings. Proceed with Phase 2. After getting the twins settled with their summer tutor, a necessity since Rebecca's departure had disrupted their usual childcare routine, Danny drove to his office. The building that housed Rourke Security Solutions had always been his sanctuary, but today it felt like a command center for the war he was waging. Trevor was waiting in the conference room with a stack of files and a grim expression. "Danny, we need to talk about Rebecca's situation." "What about it?" "Her lawyer is claiming emotional duress, saying you coerced her into leaving. They're threatening to file for emergency custody of the twins, claiming you're an unfit guardian." Danny's laugh was cold. "On what grounds?" "They're alleging that you have violent tendencies, that you've threatened Vincent with physical harm, and that you've created an unsafe environment for the children." "And Vincent? Is he available to testify to these alleged threats?" Trevor's smile was equally cold. "Vincent is no longer in a position to testify to anything. Turns out his gambling debts were more serious than we initially discovered. The people he owed money to were very creative in their collection methods." Danny felt a flicker of satisfaction. "Permanently creative? Let's just say Vincent won't be making any more claims about paternity or anything else." While Danny felt no remorse about Vincent's fate, he recognized that Rebecca's legal maneuvering posed a real threat. Despite her infidelity and deception, family courts often favored biological mothers, especially when they claim to be victims of controlling husbands. What do we know about her lawyer? Trevor consulted his files. Harrison Mills, family law specialist. Good reputation, expensive retainer. Someone's funding Rebecca's legal campaign, and it's not her part-time job at the boutique. Find out who. In the meantime, I want complete surveillance on Rebecca. Where she's staying, who she's talking to, what she's planning. She's made this about the twins, which means this is now total war. That afternoon, Danny received an unexpected visitor. Patricia Kellner, the private investigator who'd first brought him evidence of Rebecca's affair, arrived at his office with new information. Mr. Rourke, I've discovered something about Rebecca's situation that you need to know. She placed a new folder on his desk. Rebecca hasn't been staying at a hotel, as we assumed. She's been living with a man named Marcus Webb. He's a real estate developer with significant financial resources and, more importantly, political connections. Danny studied the photographs and documents. Marcus Webb was in his 50s, divorced, with a reputation for acquiring properties through aggressive tactics and city council influence. How does Rebecca know Marcus Webb? That's where it gets interesting. Marcus has been a client of Vincent's security services for the past 6 months. Vincent introduced them, apparently as part of some larger scheme. The pieces began falling into place in Danny's mind. Vincent needed money, Marcus needed a way to pressure someone, and Rebecca was the perfect tool. There's more. Marcus has been trying to acquire a large tract of land on the north side of town for a development project. The main holdout has been the City Planning Committee, which requires unanimous approval for projects of that size. Patricia handed him another document. Your neighbor, City Councilman Robert Hayes, has been the primary opponent of Marcus's project. If Marcus could create a scandal involving Robert, say, a connection to a man who threatened violence against a young mother and her children, it might provide the leverage he needs. Danny's blood ran cold. Rebecca's custody claim isn't about the twins. It's about destroying my reputation to get to Robert Hayes. It appears so. Marcus has been funding Rebecca's legal fees and providing her with housing in exchange for her cooperation in portraying you as a dangerous, controlling husband. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Vincent hadn't just destroyed Danny's marriage for personal reasons. He'd done it as part of a larger scheme to manipulate city politics and real estate deals. Rebecca wasn't just an unfaithful wife. She was an active participant in a plot to destroy everything Danny had built. Danny's phone rang. It was the twins' tutor, Mrs. Anderson, and her voice was panicked. Mr. Rourke, you need to come right away. There are people here claiming to be from Child Protective Services. They have a court order to remove Emma and Sophie from your care. The phone fell from Danny's hand as the full scope of Marcus Webb's strategy became clear. This wasn't just about real estate or political leverage. It was about taking his daughters away from him, using the legal system as a weapon to destroy what remained of his family. But Marcus Webb had made one crucial error. He'd assumed that Danny would play by conventional rules, that he would work within a system designed to favor wealth and political connections over truth and justice. Danny picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 5 years. Colonel Morrison? This is Danny Rourke. I need to cash in some favors. All of them. Chapter 5. The Network Activates. The drive to Danny's house felt like the longest 20 minutes of his life. Child Protective Services removing his daughters wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was a direct attack on everything he'd built his identity around. But as he pulled into his driveway, Danny noticed something that brought a grim smile to his face. The CPS van was still there, but it was now flanked by 3 black SUVs and a sedan with government plates. Standing on his front porch, engaged in what appeared to be a very heated discussion with the CPS workers, was Colonel Jack Morrison, Danny's former commanding officer and current head of military intelligence for the Eastern Seaboard. Danny entered his house to find Emma and Sophie sitting on the couch, wide-eyed and clutching their backpacks, while Mrs. Anderson hovered protectively nearby. In the center of the room, a standoff was taking place between 2 CPS caseworkers and Colonel Morrison, who was examining their court order with the scrutiny of someone trained to spot forged documents. Colonel, Danny said, his voice carefully controlled. Captain, Morrison replied. using Danny's former rank. Interesting afternoon you're having here. The senior CPS caseworker, a harried-looking woman in her 40s, turned to Danny with visible relief. Mr. Rourke, I'm Sarah Chun from Child Protective Services. We have a court order requiring the immediate removal of your daughters, pending an investigation into allegations of domestic violence and child endangerment. Danny took the document and read it carefully. The allegations were vague but damning. Claims that he'd threatened violence against the children's mother, that he'd created an unsafe environment, and that he'd isolated the children from their biological parent through intimidation and coercion. These allegations are false, Danny said simply. That's what they all say, the second caseworker muttered. Colonel Morrison stepped forward, his bearing radiating the kind of authority that made people instinctively straighten their posture. Ma'am, before you proceed with removing these children, you might want to verify the authenticity of your court order. I beg your pardon? Morrison handed her a tablet displaying an official government database. According to federal records, the judge who supposedly signed this order, Judge Margaret Foster, has been on medical leave for the past 2 weeks following surgery. She's currently in a rehabilitation facility in Florida, physically incapable of signing legal documents. The color drained from the caseworker's face as she realized the implications. Furthermore, Morrison continued, the case number referenced on this document doesn't exist in the county's legal database. In fact, this appears to be a rather sophisticated forgery designed to circumvent proper legal procedures. Danny felt a surge of admiration for his former commander. Morrison had always been 3 steps ahead of everyone else, and apparently that hadn't changed in the 5 years since Danny had left active duty. I don't understand, Sarah Chun stammered. We received this through proper channels. Our supervisor. Your supervisor, Morrison interrupted, received a call from someone claiming to represent the county attorney's office. That person provided him with a fabricated case file and a fraudulent court order. You and your colleague are victims of an elaborate deception. He turned to Danny with a slight smile. Fortunately, when certain people reach out to me requesting assistance, I tend to investigate thoroughly before responding. The CPS workers left with apologies and promises to investigate how they'd been manipulated into attempting an illegal child removal. Once they were gone, Morrison turned his attention to the twins, who'd watched the entire proceeding with a wide-eyed fascination of children witnessing adult drama they didn't fully understand. Girls, Danny said gently, why don't you go upstairs and play for a while? Mrs. Anderson will stay with you. Once they were alone, Morrison's expression became serious. Danny, when you called me, you said you needed to cash in favors. I assumed you meant professional assistance. I didn't realize you were dealing with an active conspiracy involving forged legal documents and attempted child abduction. It's complicated, Jack. It always is with you. Start from the beginning. Danny spent the next hour laying out everything. Rebecca's affair, Vincent's disappearance, the real estate conspiracy, Marcus Webb's involvement, and now the forged court order. Morrison listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes on his tablet. This Marcus Webb, Morrison said when Danny finished, he's more connected than you realize. We've had him on our radar for some time due to his contracts with defense contractors. He's been using his political connections to secure no-bid contracts for security services at military installations. Meaning his reach extends beyond local politics. If he's willing to forge court documents to manipulate a child custody case, he's likely involved in much more serious criminal activity. Morrison stood and walked to the window, his mind clearly working through options. Danny, I can protect you and your daughters from immediate threats, but this situation requires a more comprehensive response. Webb has resources, connections, and apparently no ethical boundaries. Fighting him conventionally will be a war of attrition you might not win. What are you suggesting? Morrison turned back to face him, his expression grim. I'm suggesting we stop playing defense and start playing offense. Webb wants to use your personal life to further his business interests. Let's examine his business interests and see what we find. That evening, while the twins were asleep, Danny's house became an unofficial command center. Morrison had arrived with 2 other men, David Park, a cybersecurity specialist, and Michael Torres, a financial crimes investigator. Both carried credentials identifying them as federal agents. "Gentlemen," Morrison began, "Mr. Rourke has provided us with evidence of a conspiracy involving real estate fraud, political corruption, and forged legal documents. Our investigation suggests this may be connected to broader criminal activities affecting national security interests." Park looked up from his laptop. Marcus Webb's financial records are interesting. He's been moving large amounts of money through offshore accounts, and several of his recent property acquisitions were funded through shell companies with questionable ownership structures. Torres added, "The security contracts Morrison mentioned are just the tip of the iceberg. Webb's been using his political connections to secure contract for services his company isn't qualified to provide, then subcontracting the actual work to entities that may not have proper security clearances." Danny felt a familiar sensation, the same focused intensity he'd experienced during military operations when scattered intelligence suddenly formed a clear picture of enemy activities. So Webb isn't just a corrupt developer. He's running a sophisticated criminal enterprise. "It appears so," Morrison confirmed. "And your situation with Rebecca was meant to serve multiple purposes. Destroying your reputation would eliminate a potential threat to his operations. Your security firm has the capability to expose his activities. Simultaneously, creating a scandal involving Councilman Hayes would remove political opposition to his development projects." Park's fingers flew across his keyboard. "I'm finding connections between Webb shell companies and several other recent cases of suspected fraud. This isn't opportunistic crime, it's systematic." "What about Rebecca?" Danny asked. "How much does she know about Webb's broader activities?" Torres consulted his notes. "Based on our surveillance, she appears to be a useful idiot. Webb is providing her with housing and legal support, but she doesn't seem aware of the larger conspiracy. Vincent was the primary connection, and with him eliminated, she's isolated and increasingly dependent on Webb support." Morrison leaned forward. "That dependency gives us an opportunity. If we can demonstrate that Rebecca has been manipulated into participating in criminal activities, we might be able to flip her against Webb. And if she won't cooperate," Morrison's smile was cold, "then she'll face the consequences of her choices. Federal conspiracy charges tend to be very persuasive." As the evening progressed, the scope of the operation expanded. Morrison made phone calls to contacts in various federal agencies, each conversation adding another layer to their understanding of Webb's criminal network. Danny realized he was no longer fighting a personal battle against an unfaithful wife and her accomplices. He was part of a federal investigation into a major criminal conspiracy. But more importantly, he now had the resources and authority to protect his daughters while ensuring that everyone who'd threatened his family faced appropriate consequences. "Jack," Danny said as the meeting wound down, "I appreciate everything you're doing, but I need to ask, what's your personal interest in this? We haven't spoken in 5 years." Morrison's expression became serious. "Danny, do you remember the Kandahar operation? When you stayed behind to ensure the rest of the team made it out?" "Ancient history. Not to me. You saved 8 lives that day, including mine. When you called asking for help, there was never any question about my response." Morrison stood and gathered his materials. "Besides, men like Webb represent everything we spent our military careers fighting against. People who use power and connections to prey on others." As the federal agents prepared to leave, Morrison turned back to Danny one final time. "Danny, this investigation will likely take several weeks to reach fruition. In the meantime, Webb will undoubtedly escalate his efforts to destroy you. Are you prepared for that?" Danny looked up the stairs toward his daughter's bedrooms, then back at Morrison. "Jack, these people made the mistake of threatening my children. I've been prepared for war since the moment they walked into my house." Morrison nodded with satisfaction. "Good, because war is exactly what they're going to get." Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. 2 weeks into the federal investigation, Marcus Webb made his first serious mistake. Frustrated by the failure of the forged court order and Danny's apparent immunity from legal pressure, Webb decided to apply more direct intimidation tactics. Danny was reviewing security footage from his home cameras when he spotted the surveillance team. Two men in a nondescript sedan had been parked across from his house for 3 consecutive mornings, photographing his routine and the twins' activities. A less experienced target might have missed them, but Danny had spent years teaching corporate executives how to identify exactly this type of threat. Instead of confronting the surveillance team directly, Danny called Morrison with the vehicle's license plate number. Within an hour, he had a complete profile of both men, Thomas Reed and Alan Voss, former police officers who'd been terminated for excessive force and now worked as private security for various clients with flexible ethical standards. Perfect, Morrison said over the phone. Webb's escalation gives us the pretext we need to move against him directly. That afternoon, while the twins were at summer camp, Danny implemented a plan that would have made his old military unit proud. Using his home security system and some carefully placed equipment borrowed from Morrison's team, he created a comprehensive surveillance net around his property. At 2 p.m., exactly as Danny had predicted, Rebecca appeared at his front door. She looked haggard and nervous, clearly operating under instructions she didn't fully understand. "Danny, we need to talk," she said when he opened the door. "Do we? I thought our lawyers were handling all communication." "Please, this is about Emma and Sophie." Danny stepped aside to let her enter, noting how her eyes quickly scanned the room as if looking for something specific. Behind her, he could see Reed and Voss adjusting their position to maintain visual contact with his house. "What about the girls, Rebecca?" She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands shaking slightly. "I've been thinking about everything that happened. Maybe we rushed into this separation. Maybe we could work things out." Danny studied her face, recognizing the signs of someone reciting a script they'd memorized but didn't believe. "That's interesting timing. 2 weeks ago, you were eager to leave. What's changed?" "I miss them. I miss you. I made a mistake with Vincent, but that doesn't mean we can't fix this." "And what does Marcus Webb think about this sudden change of heart?" Rebecca's face went white. "I don't know what you mean. Rebecca, you're living in his house, he's paying your legal fees, and his employees are watching my home as we speak. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" She stood abruptly, moving toward the kitchen. Danny followed, noting how she positioned herself near the window that provided the best view of the backyard where the twins usually played. "Danny, you're being paranoid. I just want my family back." "Your family?" "The same family you destroyed with 11 years of lies." As Rebecca continued her half-hearted attempts at reconciliation, Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. "Package delivered. Audio, video recording in progress." "Keep her talking." Danny realized that Morrison's team had been listening to the entire conversation, gathering evidence of Rebecca's participation in Webb's conspiracy. Whatever she thought she was doing, she was actually providing federal investigators with real-time evidence of criminal activity. "Rebecca, let me ask you something. When Vincent first contacted you 8 months ago, did he mention Marcus Webb?" "I know. Why would it?" "Because Vincent has been working for Webb for months. Their plan wasn't just about your personal relationship. It was about using our marriage and our daughters as tools in a much larger scheme." Rebecca's composure began to crack. "That's not true. Vincent said he wanted to be a father to the girls." "Vincent is dead, Rebecca." The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, gripping the kitchen counter for support. "What?" "Vincent's gambling debts caught up with him. The people he owed money to weren't interested in payment plans." Danny's voice was matter-of-fact, showing no emotion. "He died 3 days after he left this house." Rebecca sank into a kitchen chair, her face pale with shock. "You're lying." "Am I?" "When was the last time you heard from him directly?" "Not through Webb, not through intermediaries." "When did Vincent himself last contact you?" The silence stretched between them as Rebecca realized she hadn't heard from Vincent since that first night at Webb's house. "My God," she whispered. "Marcus said Vincent had to leave town for a while, that it wasn't safe for him to contact me directly. Webb used Vincent to destroy our marriage. Then he used Vincent's death to control you. You're not his partner in this. Rebecca, you're his prisoner." Danny's phone rang. It was Morrison, and his voice carried urgent authority. "Danny, we need to move now. Webb's people are mobilizing for what appears to be a direct assault on your location. Get Rebecca and get out. Through the kitchen window, Danny could see Reed and Voss exiting their vehicle, joined by 3 other men emerging from a panel van that had just arrived. All 5 men were armed and moving with military precision toward his house. Rebecca, listen to me very carefully. Marcus Webb has been using you to get to me, and now he's decided that subtlety isn't working. Those men outside are here to either kidnap you or eliminate both of us. Rebecca looked out the window and saw the armed men approaching. Oh God, what have I done? You made mistakes, but you can still fix them. Do exactly what I tell you, and we might both survive this. Danny moved to a concealed panel in his kitchen wall and retrieved 2 tactical vests and a pair of firearms. His home security hadn't just been about cameras and alarms. He'd always maintained the ability to defend his family against serious threats. Put this on, he ordered, handing Rebecca a vest. We're going to move to the basement safe room. Once we're there, you're going to tell federal investigators everything you know about Marcus Webb's operation. Federal investigators? Rebecca, this stopped being about our marriage the moment Webb decided to forge court documents and threaten our children. You're now a witness in a federal criminal investigation. As they moved toward the basement, Danny's house erupted in chaos. The front door exploded inward as Webb's men breached the entrance, their shouts echoing through the rooms above. But Danny had spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. His basement safe room was more than just a hiding place. It was a tactical command center with independent communication systems and multiple escape routes. As they settled into the reinforced space, Rebecca broke down completely. Danny, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. When Vincent came back, I thought maybe I could have the life I'd always wondered about. But then Marcus got involved, and everything became so complicated. Tell me about Webb's operation. What does he have you doing besides playing the role of abused wife? He's been asking me questions about your business, your clients, your security procedures. He wanted to know about your relationship with city officials, especially Robert Hayes. Above them, the sounds of the tactical assault continued, but Danny noticed they were becoming more organized, more professional. Webb's men weren't just searching. They were being systematically hunted by Morrison's team. Rebecca, I need you to understand something. When this is over, you're going to face serious legal consequences for your role in this conspiracy. But if you cooperate fully with the federal investigation, you might avoid prison and retain some level of custody rights with the twins. And if I don't cooperate, Danny's voice was cold and final. Then you'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison, and Emma and Sophie will grow up knowing their mother chose a criminal conspiracy over their well-being. The sound from upstairs gradually subsided, replaced by the organized voices of law enforcement securing the scene. Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. Targets neutralized. Scene secure. Ready for extraction. As they prepared to leave the safe room, Rebecca grabbed Danny's arm one final time. Danny, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Danny looked at the woman who'd shared his life for 12 years, who'd borne the children he'd raised as his own, who'd nearly destroyed everything he'd built through her selfishness and deception. Rebecca, forgiveness isn't about what I'm capable of. It's about what you've earned, and you haven't earned it. Chapter 7, Justice Served. The aftermath of the assault on Danny's house played out like a carefully orchestrated symphony of law enforcement efficiency. Morrison's team had not only neutralized Webb's hire mercenaries, but had done so in a way that maximized the legal consequences for everyone involved. Thomas Reed and Alan Voss, the former police officers who'd been conducting surveillance, were now facing federal charges for conspiracy to commit kidnapping and armed assault. The 3 additional men who'd participated in the home invasion were career criminals with outstanding warrants, ensuring they be removed from circulation for the foreseeable future. But the real prize was Marcus Webb himself. Danny sat in the federal building's conference room, watching through one-way glass as FBI agents questioned Webb. The real estate developer's arrogance had evaporated the moment he realized the scope of the evidence against him. Mr. Webb, Agent Torres was saying, "We have recorded conversations between you and Rebecca Rourke discussing the forged court documents." We have financial records showing payments to Vincent Castellano for services related to disrupting the Rourke marriage. We have documentation of your attempts to manipulate city council decisions through blackmail and intimidation. Webb's expensive lawyer whispered urgently in his client's ear, but Webb shook his head stubbornly. "I want to make a deal," Webb announced, ignoring his attorney's protests. Morrison, who was standing next to Danny, smiled grimly. And there it is. When rats realize the ship is sinking, they start looking for lifeboats. Over the next 3 hours, Webb provided federal investigators with a comprehensive breakdown of his criminal operations. The real estate fraud was just one component of a larger enterprise that included defense contract manipulation, political bribery, and money laundering through offshore shell companies. But more importantly, for Danny's personal situation, Webb detailed exactly how he'd manipulated Rebecca and used Vincent to destroy Danny's marriage. "Castellano came to me 8 months ago," Webb explained to the investigators. "He owed serious money to some very dangerous people, and he needed a way to generate income quickly. He knew about his relationship with Rebecca Rourke and suggested we could use that connection to pressure her husband." "Pressure him how?" Agent Torres asked. "Rourke's security firm had been asking questions about some of my development projects. His neighbor, Robert Hayes, had been blocking my Oak Ridge development, and I needed leverage to change his position. If I could create a scandal involving Rourke, make him look like an abusive, controlling husband, it would discredit Hayes by association." Danny felt a cold satisfaction as he listened to Webb destroy himself with his own confession. The man had orchestrated the destruction of Danny's family as a business strategy, treating human lives like chess pieces in his larger game. And Rebecca Rourke's cooperation? Torres continued. "She was easy to manipulate once Castellano convinced her that Rourke wasn't the biological father of her children. She genuinely believed she was doing what was best for the kids by connecting them with their real father. When Castellano disappeared, she was desperate enough to accept my help without asking too many questions." Morrison leaned over to Danny. "That's everything we need. Webb just confessed to conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and about 6 other federal felonies. He'll be lucky to see freedom again before he's 80. But Danny's attention was focused on the smaller conference room, where Rebecca was providing her own statement to investigators. Unlike Webb, she appeared genuinely remorseful. Her testimony focused on taking responsibility for her actions rather than minimizing her culpability. "I knew what I was doing was wrong," she was saying to Agent Park. "But I convinced myself it was about giving Emma and Sophie a chance to know their biological father. I didn't understand the larger conspiracy until it was too late." "Mrs. Rourke," Park said gently, "you understand that your cooperation with this investigation doesn't eliminate the legal consequences of your actions?" "I understand. I've destroyed my marriage, traumatized my children, and participated in criminal activities. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to make sure Marcus Webb faces justice for what he's done." Through the glass, Danny watched his wife of 12 years take full responsibility for the devastation she'd helped create. Part of him felt a flicker of the love that had once existed between them, but was overwhelmed by the cold fury that had sustained him through the past month. As the interrogations concluded, Morrison joined Danny in the hallway outside the conference rooms. "It's over, Danny. Webb will plead guilty to avoid a life sentence, but he's looking at 25 to 30 years minimum. Rebecca's cooperation will earn her a reduced sentence, probably 3 to 5 years, with most of it suspended in exchange for her testimony. And custody of the twins? Given her criminal conviction and cooperation with a conspiracy against their welfare, the court will likely award you full custody with minimal supervised visitation rights for Rebecca." Danny nodded, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but the cost had been enormous. What about Vincent's biological relationship to the girls? Would that complicate custody? Morrison's expression darkened. "Vincent Castellano is dead, and his criminal activities prior to his death would have disqualified him from any parental rights anyway. The girls' birth certificates list you as their father, and you've been their primary caregiver for their entire lives. No court in the country will question your parental rights." As they walked through the federal building, Danny felt a strange sense of completion. The war that had begun on Father's Day was ending exactly 1 month later, with his enemies defeated and his family protected. But as they reached the parking garage, Morrison stopped him with a serious expression. "Danny, there's one more thing you need to know. Our investigation into Webb's network uncovered something else. He wasn't working alone. He had partners, people with even more resources and fewer scruples. Taking him down will likely draw their attention to you. Are you saying this isn't over? I'm saying that men like Webb are replaceable parts in much larger machines. You've won this battle decisively, but the war against people who prey on families like yours never really ends." Danny considered this as he walked to his car. He'd spent the past month learning that he was capable of fighting back against people who threatened his family with a ruthlessness that surprised even him. The question now was whether he wanted to continue that fight or focus on rebuilding his life with his daughters. As he drove home, Danny made his decision. He would focus on Emma and Sophie, helping them heal from the trauma of their mother's betrayal and building a new life based on truth rather than deception. But he would also remain vigilant, ready to respond with overwhelming force if anyone ever threatened his family again. Some men learned to forgive and forget. Danny had learned something different. Sometimes the best protection for the people you love is ensuring that those who would harm them face consequences so severe that others think twice before following their example. Chapter 8. Rebuilding. 6 months after the federal investigation concluded, Danny stood in the kitchen of his home, preparing breakfast for Emma and Sophie. The house felt different now, not just because Rebecca was gone, but because the foundation of lies that had supported their family life for 11 years had been replaced with something more solid: truth. The twins had handled their mother's absence better than Danny had expected. Child psychologist Dr. Maria Santos had explained that children were remarkably resilient when the adults in their lives provided consistency and honesty. Danny had followed her advice, answering their questions about Rebecca's situation with age-appropriate truth rather than comforting lies. "Daddy," Sophie said as she set the table, "Mrs. Patterson asked me yesterday if Mommy was coming to the school play." Mrs. Patterson was the twins' 5th-grade teacher, and Danny appreciated her direct approach to handling the family's changed circumstances. "What did you tell her, sweetheart?" "I told her that Mommy made some bad choices and has to face consequences, but that you'll be there for sure." Danny felt a surge of pride at his daughter's mature response. Both girls had developed a sophisticated understanding of adult consequences that would serve them well throughout their lives. Emma looked up from her homework. "Daddy, some kids at school said their parents are getting divorced because they don't love each other anymore. Is that why you and Mommy got divorced?" This was the question Danny had been preparing for since the custody hearing 6 months ago. Dr. Santos had helped him develop an explanation that was truthful without being unnecessarily harsh. "Emma, your mother and I got divorced because she made choices that broke the trust our marriage was built on. When adults can't trust each other, they can't build a healthy family together." "But you still love us, right?" Sophie asked, echoing the fundamental fear that Dr. Santos had warned him about. "Girls, look at me." Danny waited until both twins met his eyes. "I will love you until the day I die, and every day after that. Nothing your mother did, nothing anyone else could ever do, will change that. You are my daughters, and I am your father. That's permanent." The security and confidence in their expressions reminded Danny why he'd fought so hard to protect them. These two girls deserved a childhood built on stability and truth, not the shifting foundations of adult deception. Danny's phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. New client consultation at 10 a.m. High-profile corporate security assessment. Since the conclusion of the Webb investigation, Rourke Security Solutions had experienced unexpected growth. Word had spread through certain circles that Danny Rourke was someone who could handle complex threats with absolute discretion and overwhelming effectiveness. Corporate executives facing extortion, politicians dealing with blackmail, and wealthy families concerned about kidnapping threats had all sought his services. The irony wasn't lost on Danny that his personal tragedy had enhanced his professional reputation, but he'd learned to compartmentalize such contradictions. After dropping the twins at school, Danny drove to his office for the client consultation. The prospective client was Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Chief Technology Officer for a major pharmaceutical company. Mr. Rourke, Dr. Walsh began, I need your help with a delicate situation. My company has developed a breakthrough treatment for pediatric cancer, but we've received threats from a group that claims our research involves unethical practices. Danny listened as Dr. Walsh explained the complexity of her situation. Animal rights activists had targeted her research facility, but the threats had escalated beyond typical protest activities to include personal threats against her teenage daughter. Dr. Walsh, have you involved law enforcement? The FBI is investigating, but they've advised me to hire private security for my family while they pursue the threat actors. Your name came highly recommended. As Danny reviewed the case file, he recognized patterns similar to the web conspiracy, organized harassment designed to pressure specific business decisions through personal intimidation. I can help you, Danny said, but I want you to understand how I operate. I don't just provide passive protection. If someone threatens your family, I identify them, neutralize the threat, and ensure they face appropriate consequences. Dr. Walsh studied his expression carefully. Mr. Rourke, I've heard that you have a very direct approach to problem solving. Given what my daughter is facing, that's exactly what I want. Over the next hour, Danny developed a comprehensive security plan that included protection for Dr. Walsh's daughter, investigation of the threat network, and proactive measures to discourage future targeting. But more importantly, he felt the familiar satisfaction of using his skills to protect another family from the kind of predators who'd attacked his own. That evening, as Danny helped the twins with their homework, Emma looked up with a thoughtful expression. Daddy, at school today, Mrs. Patterson was talking about how some people choose to be heroes and some people choose to be villains. Which one are you? The question caught Danny off guard. He'd never thought of himself in those terms, but as he considered everything that had happened over the past months, he realized his daughters were developing their own understanding of moral complexity. Emma, I think most people are capable of being both heroes and villains, depending on the situation. What matters is what you choose to protect, and how far you're willing to go to protect it. Sophie joined the conversation. So, when someone threatens our family, you choose to be the hero? That's right, sweetheart. When someone threatens the people I love, I choose to be whatever I need to be to keep them safe. Both girls seemed satisfied with this explanation, returning to their homework with the easy acceptance of children who trusted their father completely. Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Danny stood in his backyard looking up at the treehouse he'd built for them 3 years ago. The structure had survived the chaos of the past year unchanged, a symbol of the stability he'd tried to provide despite the foundation of lies beneath their family life. His phone rang. It was Morrison calling from Washington. Danny, I wanted to give you an update on the web network investigation. We've identified 3 more individuals involved in similar operations across the country. If you're interested, we could use your expertise on a consulting basis. Danny considered the offer. The prospect of hunting predators who threatened families was appealing, but his priority remained clear. Jack, I appreciate the offer, but my focus is on rebuilding my daughter's lives. Maybe in a few years, when they're older and more settled. I understand. But Danny, if you ever change your mind, the offer stands. Men with your particular combination of skills and motivation are rare. After ending the call, Danny walked through his house, checking locks and security systems as had become his nightly routine. The physical security measures were probably unnecessary now, but they represented something more important, his commitment to ensuring that nothing and no one would ever again threaten the family he'd built. As he passed the twins' rooms, he could hear their peaceful breathing through the slightly open doors. Emma and Sophie would grow up knowing that their father was someone who kept his promises, who protected what he loved, and who never allowed predators to succeed. They would also grow up understanding that some betrayals were unforgivable, that actions had permanent consequences, and that the people who truly loved them would never compromise their safety for personal gain. These were harsh lessons for children to learn, but Danny had concluded that children who understood these realities were better prepared to navigate a world that could be both beautiful and dangerous. Chapter 9. The Final Truth. One year after the last Father's Day, Danny found himself sitting across from Rebecca in the visiting room of the federal minimum security facility where she was serving her sentence. She looked older, thinner, but there was a clarity in her eyes that hadn't been there during the chaos of the Webb investigation. The decision to bring Emma and Sophie for this supervised visit hadn't been easy. Dr. Santos had recommended it as part of their ongoing therapy, arguing that the twins needed closure with their mother to fully process their family's transformation. "Girls," Rebecca said softly, her voice catching with emotion, "you've grown so much." Emma and Sophie sat close to Danny, their body language reflecting the complex mixture of love and wariness they felt toward their mother. They'd spent months in therapy processing Rebecca's betrayal, and while they'd reached a point of understanding, forgiveness remained elusive. "Hi, Mommy," Sophie said quietly. "Daddy said you wanted to see us." "I did. I wanted to apologize to you both for the choices I made. I wanted you to know that everything that happened was my fault, not yours, and certainly not your father's fault." Emma, now 11 and displaying increasing emotional maturity, studied her mother's face carefully. "Mrs. Santos said you were confused about what was right and what was wrong." "That's true, honey. I let other people convince me to make bad decisions, and I hurt the people I loved most because of it." Danny remained silent, allowing the twins to navigate their own emotional responses to seeing Rebecca. This visit was about their needs, not his feelings about their mother's betrayal. "Mommy," Sophie asked, "are you going to come home when you get out of jail?" Rebecca glanced at Danny before answering. "No, sweetheart. Your father and I aren't married anymore, and I can't live with you. But I hope that someday, when you're older, we can spend time together if you want to. Will you lie to us again?" Emma's question was direct and uncompromising. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, I promise I will never lie to you again. Ever. I've learned that lies hurt people, especially the people we love." The visit continued for another hour, with Rebecca answering the twins' questions honestly and taking full responsibility for the consequences of her actions. Danny found himself impressed by her growth during incarceration, even as he remained unmoved by her obvious remorse. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca addressed Danny directly for the first time. "Danny, I know you'll never forgive me, and I understand why. But I want you to know that watching you protect Emma and Sophie this past year has shown me what real love looks like. They're lucky to have you as their father." Danny's response was measured and final. "Rebecca, the girls will always know that you're their mother, and they'll make their own decisions about what relationship they want with you as they get older. But you're right about one thing: I will never forgive you. Some betrayals are permanent." The drive home was quiet, with both twins processing the emotional complexity of seeing their mother in prison. As they pulled into their driveway, Emma spoke up. "Daddy, do you think Mommy really learned her lesson? I think your mother understands the consequences of her choices now. Whether that's the same as learning her lesson, only time will tell." Sophie leaned against Danny's shoulder. "I'm glad we live with you and not with her." "Why is that, sweetheart?" "Because you never lied to us, even when the truth is hard. Mommy lied because she thought it would be easier, but it made everything worse." That evening, Danny received a call from Dr. Walsh, the pharmaceutical executive whose case he'd resolved 6 months earlier. The animal rights extremists who'd threatened her family were now serving federal sentences for domestic terrorism, and her daughter had returned to a normal teenage life. "Mr. Rourke, I want to thank you again for everything you did for my family. But I'm calling because I have a friend who's facing a similar situation. Would you be willing to help?" Danny considered the request. His business was thriving, his daughters were healing and growing stronger, and he'd discovered a sense of purpose in protecting other families from the kind of predators who'd attacked his own. "Dr. Walsh, have your friend call my office tomorrow. We'll discuss the situation and determine what kind of assistance might be appropriate." After ending the call, Danny walked upstairs to check on the twins. Emma was reading in bed, while Sophie was working on a painting at her desk. "Daddy," Sophie said, not looking up from her artwork, "I painted this for you." The painting showed a man and 2 girls standing in front of a house, with a large tree in the background. The figures were simple but recognizable, and the overall composition radiated warmth and security. It's beautiful, sweetheart. What's the tree? That's our tree house. I want to paint our family the way it really is now. Danny studied the painting more carefully. There was no figure representing Rebecca, no visual reference to the family structure that had existed for the first 10 years of their lives. Sophie had painted their current reality, a father and his daughters, complete and self-sufficient. Sophie, where would you put Mommy in this painting if you wanted to include her? Sophie considered the question seriously. I think she would be in a different painting. Maybe visiting sometimes, but not living here. This painting is about our real family. Emma looked up from her book. Daddy, Mrs. Patterson asked us to write an essay about our heroes. I wrote about you. What did you say? I wrote that heroes are people who protect the people they love, even when it's hard. And that real heroes don't just fight bad guys in movies. They fight bad guys in real life, too. As Danny tucked both girls into bed, he reflected on the transformation their family had undergone. A year ago, they'd been living a lie that felt comfortable and stable. Today, they were living a truth that was sometimes difficult, but always authentic. Emma and Sophie would grow up understanding that love meant protection, that trust had to be earned and maintained, and that some people would always choose their own interests over the welfare of others. They would also understand that when faced with such people, the appropriate response was swift, decisive, and permanent. These were not lessons Danny had planned to teach his daughters at such a young age, but circumstances had forced his hand. Now, watching them process complex moral realities with wisdom beyond their years, he felt confident he'd made the right choices. The last Father's Day had indeed been the end of something, the end of a family built on deception and compromise. But it had also been the beginning of something stronger, a family built on truth, protection, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughters. As Danny settled into his own bed, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Vincent Castellano was dead, Marcus Webb was serving a life sentence, and Rebecca was learning the consequences of betrayal. His daughters were safe, his business was thriving, and anyone who might consider threatening his family in the future would think twice after learning what had happened to the last people who'd made that mistake. Some men forgave. Some men forgot. Danny Rourke protected what he loved and eliminated threats to his family with the precision and ruthlessness of someone who understood that the price of peace was eternal vigilance. The war for his family's future was over. He had won. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.